Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
All right. Welcome back, Wolf Pack. This is Fox Trevize here. Alongside me tonight is nobody. It's just me tonight, which is something I want to talk about here in a second. Give me just a second though, because I had all day to prepare for this, and I hit go, and I wasn't ready to go, which is only my fault. All right. So, as always, I have a great show for you tonight. And like I said, alongside me is just myself tonight. We'll be having some guests in the future, some more regular characters, I suppose. But I guess one of the things that maybe we'll talk about before we get into the show tonight is why is it just me here tonight? Why was it just me here last week? Where has Dire Wolf gone? Now, Dire Wolf wanted me to make up a story about how he heroically gave his life saving small kittens from a dumpster fire after a car crashed into it. But the real reason why, as you guys know, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now. The political situation is not getting less extreme, less polarized. And right now there is there's been for the last year and a half, last 2-3 years, kind of a mass exodus from the military of people who are not on board with the wokeness, the critical race theory training, racist, anti-political messaging that the military has put out through its various channels. And more recently, there's been a mass exodus of soldiers saying that they will not be getting the mandatory vaccines. But there's a lot of reasons why this is why military people are leaving the service. But the problem with that is a lot of the people that are leaving the military service are people who like American values, that enlisted because they wanted to defend their country. And the reason why they're leaving is because of a lot of new military policy and teachings that is counter to America and her values. For instance, the former head of our newest branch, Space Force, was removed because he published a book that taught Marxism, that taught the evils of, explained why Marxism was evil. Not that it taught the evils of Marxism, but explained why Marxism was counter to the American value system that we have, and why it was a problem that certain Marxist theories were getting pushed into military training sessions. For that opinion, he was removed from his position and discharged. There's a lot of other stories like that, unfortunately too numerous to go into. And I think you guys know where I'm going with this, but Dire Wolf, while we are kind of figuring out what the new political landscape is, Dire Wolf has decided that it is better serving the country to keep himself in the military for as long as they will have him. I believe that as well, as much as it pains me. But that is why he will not be appearing on the news or political side of the show. We plan on restarting games soon, and he'll be back for that. But to not unnecessarily jeopardize his position in the military, he has decided to step back from editorial influence on the political part of the show. Let's see here. I didn't really have a we talked about this a little bit before the show, but I didn't have anything written out for this. I'm kind of doing this off the cuff, guys, so apologize for kind of meandering a little bit, kind of a lot of and thinking about which words I want to say. But basically, because of the mass exodus of your more patriotic, more American values system type military people. It's becoming more and more critical that they stay in, because if people that love America are leaving the military, who's left? It's the people that like the critical race theory training sessions, that like the Marxist indoctrination, that like having we saw a couple of weeks ago one TikTok soldier girl was very excited about the possibility of getting to shoot American citizens after martial law was declared. So those are the kind of people that are unfortunately being left in the military, as the more patriotic ones, the more constitutionally minded ones, are either self-selecting to be removed or being forced out by their leadership. So, like I said, Dyer, and I agree, believes that he can better serve the country by maintaining his position in the military when so many people like him are leaving, and he doesn't want to do anything to jeopardize that, because that wouldn't be what his mission is. So one of the reasons why he started this show was because he felt like he needed to take a more active role in shaping the American political system and the politics and the culture. And that was a similar reason as to why he joined the military, was to defend America and her values. And again, given the current situation, he believes that he can better serve both those purposes by maintaining himself in the military for as long as they'll have him, and by not doing anything that would unnecessarily jeopardize his position in the military. So I could probably repeat that over again in a slightly different way, but I think you guys get the point. It pains both of us to say it, to have that be said. As for the future of the show, you will have me for as long as Dyer will allow me to continue spewing my nonsense. We have some candidates for more semi-permanent positions. Some of you guys who are more regular viewers and active in the community, we might be bringing you on for some guesting positions. So a lot of stuff going on. We're not quite sure what this will look like in the future, but the point is it will look like something in the future. Direwolf Media is not over. Direwolf Media is not canceled. It will continue on in some shape or form. And we appreciate you guys sticking through it with us in these troubling times. And it is our hope that, someday soon that things will change and everybody will be able to come back and do what they want to do with the show. But right now is not that time. So, back to the show. Back to the opener here. Let's see here. So, as always, like I said, I got a great show for you tonight. Always have a great show when it's just me. I don't know what it was about that Direwolf guy, but you guys seem to like it when it's just me. So, let's see here. So, we also would especially like to thank those of you that donate to us financially, including Kaylette, Ori Main, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke Garcia, Thundra Erican, The White Lion, and The Timber Wolf. Money is not the only way that you can give, though. We also appreciate you liking and subscribing to us on DLive, Twitch, and YouTube. And we especially like when you share links to this channel on any social media that you happen to find yourself on, as the algorithm doesn't spread it for us. So, let's see here. So our first, wow, that's a hell of a picture. So our first story tonight is on the border. So you guys saw the title of the show. Biden has canceled horses. I wish that was a little more hyperbolic than the reality of the situation, but it's actually quite accurate that Biden has canceled horses. Let's get into the story here. So, starting on the 9th of September, there has been a essentially constant flood of illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, who have been crossing the border at Del Rio, Texas. Initially, this group of mostly Haitian immigrants, illegal immigrants, didn't make the headlines because 20, 30,000 immigrants kind of blends in with the 200,000 illegal immigrants that have been flooding the border every month the last 5 months of the Biden administration, which is just crazy. It's just off the charts how many people are flooding over the border. We've had like barely over 1 million per year as a record before, and the Biden administration was able to get over 1 million in the first 6 months of illegal border crossings. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. Let's see here. So, however, these 30,000 additional Haitians are now just normal part of the mass immigration. It's this view on the border that we've got here, this image of just thousands of people creating essentially a small city at the border. That's all. It's just part and parcel of American border now. It's not anything new or crazy given the last 5 to 6 months. This has just been, another one. You might not even notice that it's, unique to being Haitians if it wasn't for us talking about it right now. Let's see here. So there are so many Haitian immigrants focused in one area that Border Patrol were unprepared and unable to remove them. So the illegals in Del Rio set up a camp under the International Bridge, which I believe is marking the border. It kind of seems like you could just take that bridge and just put like a wall underneath of it. It would probably like help structurally keep up the bridge, and then it would also, keep the border maintained. I don't know. I'm not an engineer. Initially, the mainstream media tried to ignore this ocean of illegal immigrants living in a tent city, which I believe they were trying to start calling Bidenville, just across our border. However, this camp the last 3 weeks has been exploding in size. Let's be clear. These illegal migrants are not refugees or asylum seekers. The vast majority of these illegals left Haiti in 2010, which was like a long time ago. Biden was in office back then, actually, after a serious earthquake that destroyed a large portion of their country and killed about 200,000 people. You might remember this earthquake because you might remember the story being tied to the Clinton Foundation that raised is a generous way of putting it, $13 billion to rebuild Haiti after this disaster. But the Clinton Foundation only gave about 10% of that $13 billion to Haiti. These immigrants have spent the time since 2010 living in other countries such as Chile and Brazil as legitimate refugees there. Many of them actually have Brazilian documents and ID cards because they've been in Brazil for so long. They've left those countries now to come to America illegally because of the promise that Biden will allow them in and give them a free ride. They have traveled, the ones that went from Brazil, they've traveled through 11 different safe, quote-unquote, safe countries on their way to our border. Many are coming with T-shirts that read, "Biden, please let me in." Legitimate refugees don't have the time or the money to wear campaign promotional shirts. Unless, of course, somebody named Soros is buying them for you. This is how people behave when they are escaping poverty or violence. In reality, they just left countries that they were safe in just to go to America. Because why? Because we have this gigantic welfare state that the Democrats have built. Why did the Democrats build it? Well, because if you had, 20-30% more of your money every year instead of paying it off to taxes. Let's say you're probably paying about 30% taxes every year, right? What if you had like just half of that? Yeah, that's like a 15% raise for you. What would you do? That's a whole month and a half worth of wages that you just could get to keep. Maybe you could invest it. Maybe you could become a real estate mogul, or, follow your dreams and build a YouTube channel, or who knows what. Maybe you could start a small business. Maybe you could invest in your friend's small business. Who knows what you could do with that money? Maybe maybe you'd be a success. So we have to make sure that there's this giant welfare state and tax apparatus to ensure that, you know, you don't do anything too dangerous with that money, like be free or something. So the Democrats have created that over the last, 50, 70 years now, to make sure that you don't have enough money, because they're scooping it all up in taxes. And they've got this giant welfare program that attracts the riffraff from all the shitholes in the world to come to here. And then they vote Democrat and keep the Democrats in. Democrats create more welfare to attract more shitholers and keep taking more of your money. And the cycle just continues and continues and continues. Let's see here. So that's why these people want to come here, because they know they're going to get free stuff. But it's not just free stuff that didn't come from anywhere. I think that's one of the big problems when we talk about, the migrants, just, the illegal aliens, they just want free stuff, right? Well, it's not that they want free stuff. It's that they want your stuff. The free stuff that the Democrats are giving them is actually your stuff that the government took from you. It's kind of almost like taxation is theft. Let's see here. So this story about this specific group of illegal border crossers was finally broke by Fox News, not by me, the actual Fox News, who provided the world with shocking aerial drone footage of Biden City. This led to the administration banning drones from flying in the vicinity of this camp, which was funny because it was Pete Buttigieg, who's the transport secretary, who was the originator for the order that banned drone flights in the area. And what's actually funny is, obviously this was like extremely tyrannical move, and Fox News immediately started suing the administration, and the administration eventually did back down on it, but there were several days where it was quote unquote illegal or restricted airspace over the camps that Fox was unable to fly drones around in. And that's kind of authoritarianism, shutting down the media, using the regular, like there was no safety reason why the FAA under Pete Buttigieg put that regulation in and restricted the airspace. There was no security concerns. There was no danger concerns. There was no classified concerns. No, they just pure and simple, they had this gigantic regulatory apparatus, and it's supposed to be, it's for your protection, and what they really use it for is to oppress you, to use this giant regulatory apparatus against their political adversaries. It's just pure naked corruption. There's not a lot of twists and turns in there. It's just, you're corrupt, and you're using your corrupt power to keep yourself in power and to keep your opponents out of power. Not a lot to it. Let's see here. So the reason why they did this, again, to hide the story out, that even Democrat voters were starting to get outraged. So the Democrats needed to take control of the narrative. So naturally, when the Democrats need to take control of the narrative, what do? They blame it on Trump. And then they also blamed it on racism. So it was Trump's fault. And then also the Border Patrol officers are probably racist. And they're actually so racist, they were, quote, worse than slavery. That was from Maxine Waters, I believe. I think we got a video clip. Let's see here. What's she got to say?
I'm unhappy, and I'm not just unhappy.
I'm going to restart this clip in a second, but just Maxine declaring that she's unhappy. We know, Maxine. We know that you're unhappy. You look unhappy all the time. You're clearly an unhappy person. You're kind of a miserable person. So just hearing her finally admit that is kind of funny. Let's restart that clip, though.
I'm pissed. I'm unhappy, and I'm not just unhappy with the cowboys who were running down Haitians and using their reins to whip them. I'm happy with the administration. We are following the Trump policy. He is the one that does not follow the Constitution and would not allow those seeking refuge to be able to petition to get into the country. What the hell are we doing here? What we witness takes us back hundreds of years. What we witnessed was worse than what we witnessed in slavery.
Worse than slavery. Wow. All right. So a few things to note here. These are not Trump policies because Trump policy was remain in Mexico. There wasn't border villages under Trump. There was, I guess, staging areas inside Mexico in the cities that were resourced and staffed and had, processing claims and all that sort of stuff. And that's where people went to. That's where they were taken to. That's where they went to, was remain in Mexico. The remain in Mexico policy was not build a tent city called Biden City on the border under an overpass with, 15,000 residents. I think the city I live in is like 25 or 30,000, and it's like a whole city. Like 15,000 people. That's a lot of people to have like a tent city with. Let's see here. So the Trump policy was remain in Mexico, and it did not allow immigrants to request refugee status unless they were actual refugees. But the only people that we can receive refugees from are Mexico and Canada, because it's international law that a refugee is to take asylum in the first safe country that they are in. So unless, I don't know, I mean, there might be a handful of people that, I don't know, they somehow escaped on a boat or stowed away on a plane or something like that, and they just happen to pop up in America, but that's going to be few and far between. Not 200,000 a month. That's a little bit much. So one of the portions of the Remain in Mexico policy was that Mexico is a safe country. Now, that might be debatable, and I'm not gonna say that Mexico is a shithole country and is not a safe country, but the Democrats might say that. I'm not the Democrats though. So anybody who's making it on foot through Mexico to the U.S. border, they are by definition they're not refugees. They might be invaders. They might be illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, but they're not refugees. So the Democrats keep trying to say refugee, and they think if they say refugee enough that maybe it'll become true, but it's just not. Let's see here. Another lie from Maxine here is this, and from the Democrats generally, is just this idea that preventing illegal immigration, that it's worse than slavery, it's terrible, it's inhumane, how could you possibly do that? That really downplays the idea of slavery, which I don't think anybody thinks that slavery was a good thing. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe some like crazy people do, but I'd say everybody was pretty aware modern day that slavery is pretty bad, right? It wasn't a good thing. And just because everything always has to escalate, right? It's not just Orange Man bad, it's Orange Man's the worst. It's not just that like you're a racist, it's that you're worse than slavery. Everything just has to escalate and escalate and escalate because of the clickbaity algorithms that are only selecting the most extreme of the extreme of the extreme. You guys want to, or the Democrats want to talk about polarization. How polarizing is it for Maxine to say, "Oh, it's worse than slavery"? Okay, I mean, the last time we talked like that, we had somebody from Antifa firebombed an immigrant facility after AOC said something about it basically being modern day slavery. Somebody from Antifa was like, "Oh my God, it's worse than slavery. Well, I got to do something about that." And he went and firebombed an ICE facility and got I believe a shot around to the chest for his troubles there. So this kind of talk is, well, I mean, it's what the Democrats do. It's especially what Maxine does. Maxine loves to stir people up and to try to get them to commit some kind of violence in response to her rhetoric. She does that all the time, especially with Antifa. So that's kind of unsurprising, but worth pointing out. And then I believe later in the clip here, which is 2 minutes long, and I don't want to subject you to 2 minutes of Maxine. You guys can go look it up if you want. She talks about, and the Democrats have talked about this generally that these Haitian refugees are escaping violence from Haiti, and that's why they need asylum. What kind of violence is it? I don't know. They didn't say. Is it religious violence? No. Is it ethnic violence? No. Is it I don't know, Antifa burning down their small businesses? Probably not. So that's just kind of a lie too. The problem is that a lot of places in the world are violent, guys. America, you got it pretty good here. The West has, for all of its troubles, we have figured out violence and how to keep it at a pretty low level. The West is relatively safe. Now, the last couple of years, stuff's gotten a little bit hotter, right? But who's been doing that? It's not been the right. It's been the left. But most other places in the world are pretty violent. They're pretty tough living. It's a lot of poverty, a lot of violence, a lot of stuff happens, and kind of sucks, doesn't it? But we can't take in everybody. We tried for 20 years and $2 trillion to build up Afghanistan into a quote-unquote safe place, and what happened? It fell in like a day. It fell in a day and a night. It almost fell faster than Atlantis did. So this idea that Haitians are experiencing violence in their country, so they need to come to America. That's not our problem, guys. I really don't know how else to put it. It might sound just blunt, or you're not making a good argument. And at this point, and I'm starting to feel this with a lot of other topics too, with the left, kind of this engaging this argument. They're not engaging in kind of good faith arguments about stuff. You can explain why your position, that this isn't what countries are, and then they'll get you on, what's the definition of a country, or you've got no heart and all this. I kind of am starting to get to this point where I just don't care. If Haitians are experiencing violence in their country, I don't know. That's not my problem. I don't think that's your guys' problem. Is that harsh? Yeah. Do I care that Fox, you're heartless? I don't care. I don't care anymore. We have gotten so far past the pale that I don't feel the need to justify myself. The Democrats never have to justify themselves other than just, it feels right. Well, I think it feels wrong that we just bring in 200,000 unknown people who their very first act in the country is to lie to us as to why they're here, and they're abandoning their countries because it's violent, and they're bringing their violence over here. I don't think I need to really justify that any more so than just, it doesn't feel right to me. We shouldn't do it. Let's see here. So many in the media and the Democrat congressmen have accused border enforcement officers of using whips. My gosh, how could they? Let's see here. Based on this picture, the Democrats think that this is a whip. And another picture at the same moment, you can, let's see here. So you can see here that the illegal immigrant is not being whipped, and Democratic congressman accused the border enforcement officers of using whips on the migrants based on this picture. Another picture of this, the photographer who took that picture said that it was also not a whip. But the truth doesn't matter, just like hands up, don't shoot, or, you go on with that for quite a while. There's a lot of those. The left will remember the lie and never the retraction. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with a horse, these are reins. They're not whips. Border enforcement is not authorized or issued whips. They are issued, reins for their horse. Also, if this guy is getting whipped, he kind of looks like he's smiling. I don't know if that counts as being whipped or not. Let's see here. So, yeah, and you can see that this picture is from the front and the back. So I guess two photographers took a picture at nearly the same moment. Because you can see, you kind of line up, the guy's got his arms out. And what's he holding in his arms, by the way, guys? He's got, Chinese takeout, little styrofoam bins in there. Like, he crossed the border with Chinese takeout. Is that really I don't know. The modern age is weird. Let's see here. So the mainstream media will eventually start referring to the officers' use as reins as whip-like, the way that Maxine said. So, they were whipping the migrants. It was worse than slavery. And then it's like, nope. Those weren't whips. They were reins. And then Maxine comes out and goes, they were using the reins like whips. No, they were using the reins like reins. Let's see here. So one of the things that was noted from people who ride horses, I have ridden horses. I don't ride horses. That sounded weird. I've ridden horses in the past. I don't regularly ride horses. I am familiar with what reins are and what they look like, and more or less what they do. Although I believe the last horse I was on did not respect the reins in the way that he probably should have. It was a defective horse. So I think it's funny that you imagine a lot of the stuff that's going on in modern day. You imagine kind of the conversations that how would you explain this to the founding fathers? And that gets brought up a lot, kind of in a less, kind of in more serious tones by a lot of people, like, oh, the founding fathers would have thought this, and this. It's like, yeah, you don't really know that. But I do think it would be funny to try to explain to people from the late 1700s that eventually, let's say they were drafting the First Amendment, right? And they're talking about freedoms of the press. And you as a time traveler, you pop back in time, and they're talking about freedom of the press being part of the First Amendment, and you say, hey, 250 years from now, that piece that you wrote there, that First Amendment, the bit about the press will eventually use that freedom. 250 years from now, horses will be so uncommon that the entire press corps will have not only never ridden a horse, but are completely unfamiliar with how horses are even ridden. That they will mistake reins for whips, and they'll run with that for a week, and they're going to use that thing that you just wrote, that First Amendment, they're going to use that to say those things. And the founding fathers, I think, would have a pretty hard time imagining that this would end up being the result of what they wrote. Very unintended consequences. Let's see here. I have somebody's at my front door here. Oh, no, it's just a car. All right, we're good. So, I just think that'd be funny that, again, like, horses were obviously ubiquitous until rather recently. I think about 75 years ago, that's when horses started getting phased out. But a lot of people still ride horses. Clearly, this is another mark of the divide between the cities and the not cities, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the more rural states and counties and areas that the city folk just have no concept of. Your inner city New York gun laws, trying to apply that to the wilderness of Tennessee, it doesn't make sense. But because the people, the congressmen from there have just no concept, the media has just no concept of what other places are like other than the city. They just that's their only reference point. And so you see that with a lot of topics like gun control and climate policy and agriculture and all that stuff. And you see it like this, where just something that would be so obvious to anybody who is from a town of less than 10,000, which is a lot of people, and a lot of other people too, who just have some familiarity with the outdoors. You just have this entire cast of media people who've never ridden a horse, are completely unfamiliar with how horses work or what the basic equipment for a horse is. And I just think that's incredible that we've gotten to such a point of the future that the media doesn't know what horses are and is confusing basic horse equipment for whips. It's I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but that's what I do on this show. So I guess let me know in chat if you also find that to be, I don't know. I don't think it's ironic. It's something. I don't think the ironic's the right word for it, but it's something. It's funny. Let's see here. So also kind of my hot take on this is Border Patrol is not using whips, but maybe they should be. we've gotten to a point where what are they supposed to do? We're just not allowed to enforce the border at all. Is that what we're doing? You got to do something. I think a whip is probably the easiest thing, because I think that actual border defense, if this was, I don't know, if this was like a flood of Nazis coming over the border, I think that we would respond with, something a little more stern than a whip. These people they're not anything but economic migrants. They're being brought over here by leftist NGOs, and it's for specific purpose to try to consume your resources as a taxpayer and to make sure that Democrats keep getting the vote. It's almost a civil war invasion of sorts, and we should respond to it in kind. Let's see here. So for the Border Patrol agents that were, riding horses as they do, Joe Biden has a message for them. Let's see here.
To immediately end Trump, that you were going to restore the moral standing of the U.S., that you were going to immediately end Trump's assault on the dignity of immigrant communities. Given what we saw at the border this week, have you failed in that promise? And this is happening under your watch. Do you take responsibility for the chaos that's unfolding?
Of course I take responsibility. I'm president, but it was horrible what to see, as you saw. To see people treated like they did, horses really running them over, people being strapped, it's outrageous. I promise you those people will pay. They will be, an investigation underway now, and there will be consequences. There will be consequences. It's an embarrassment, but it's beyond an embarrassment. It's dangerous. It's wrong. It sends the wrong message around the world. It sends the wrong message at home. It's simply not who we are. Thank you.
So not the migrants taking, not the illegal border crossers. They don't face consequences. They're not going to get investigated or in trouble. The people that bought the, Joe Biden, please let us in shirts, those people aren't getting investigated. Nope, it's the Border Patrol that's going to be investigated. It's the people doing their job to defend the border. We've talked about this a few times. The federal government has very few jobs outlined in the Constitution. One of them is integrity of the border of the Union of States. That's one of their only jobs that they actually have. And they're so thrilled to do all of the jobs that they don't have in the Constitution, and they want nothing to do with a job that they do actually have. Now, I also have a little bit of a nuanced take on this, too, because I also think the Border Patrol needs to be investigated. Here's why. The Border Patrol has not been defending the border at all. They have been facilitating the mass invasion of the United States for a while now. They're doing it extensively under Biden, but they've been doing it under Trump as well, and back during the Obama administration as well. There was a story from about 2 months ago that we didn't cover, but it was kind of funny. There was a coyote, not the fuzzy ones, the ones that are Mexican border crossing experts that take your money. The way that their racket was that they bought a white van and they put decals and plates on it that made it look like it was an ICE van, and they did a pretty good reconstruction of it, and it was funny. And so what happened was they dressed up, they had border agent uniforms on too, and so Border Patrol came across this van that was kind of a duplicate of theirs, and they realized that something was amiss. And so they kind of investigated a little bit, and they realized, oh, this ICE van that's got all these ICE decals on it and Border Patrol enforcement decals on it, and these people that are in Border Patrol uniforms, they're not really Border Patrol, and the 10 people that they had in the back were actually illegal border crossers. And so these people are trying to make it look like, oh, well, we're just detaining illegal border crossers, let us drive into the country. And it's a pretty good racket, except for how did Border Patrol respond to that? Well, Border Patrol pulled them over. They pulled over a fake ICE truck with real illegal immigrants in the back of it. And they then put all of those illegal immigrants into their real ICE truck, and then they drove them into the country, processed them, and then released them into the country. So I'm having a hard time seeing what the difference was between the coyote and Border Patrol. It seemed to be that Border Patrol was just upset that the coyotes were kind of wearing their team colors and kind of taking their business. The Border Patrol says, hey, it's our job to bring illegal immigrants into the country, not yours. Why are you doing this? Why are you wearing our uniform? Why are you impostoring us? You're taking our territory, man. It's kind of like a gang warfare type of a thing. So I think Border Patrol needs to be investigated as well. And honestly, at this point, they have done such a poor job of this. Border Patrol, again, ICE just being used as a kind of laundering service to bring hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants in every month. And none of the now the Border Patrol agents on the ground, not necessarily their fault, but the people higher up in ICE, they're all good to go with this. They're allowing it to happen. They don't see a problem with it. None of them, there was, at the beginning of the Biden administration, one of them sent kind of a strongly worded letter that he didn't approve of the Biden administration policy, but he didn't resign. He didn't stop all of his people from following those orders. He didn't request hearings or sue the administration or anything like that. Nope, he just kind of, I'm going to keep doing what you told me to do. I just want you to know I'm not happy about it. Like, oh, okay, yeah, that's like the real backbone stand-up kind of guy that we need defending the border. Like, thank you for your service, man. And you've got that all the way down the line. Whoever gets in next, if it's a Republican, they really, really need to take care of ICE. ICE and Border Patrol really, really needs to get fixed up, because the administration currently and the State Department, the deep state, they've really, really done a number on those two agencies, just, again, turning them into laundering services that just pull in as many immigrants as possible. And they've got a few guys who, I bet in these Border Patrol agents, they, the guys at the back at the Home Office probably just don't like them. And they're like, oh, well, we got to look like we're doing something. So I guess send Fred out there and he'll get in trouble with the president because his reins look like whips or something. So you have, again, it's kind of theater. They send out a couple of these agents to kind of, let's calm down the border. Let's slow the tide a little bit. We'll give some good pictures for the cameras. But in reality, on the back end, you've got ICE just processing tens and tens of thousands of these people every day. And where are they going to? Let's see. Well, actually, let's talk about Jen Psaki, who has specified that horses are indeed canceled. And then we'll talk about ICE pulling in, essentially becoming coyotes and pulling in as many illegals as they possibly can. But first, Jen, what do you think about horses?
So what he has asked all of us to convey clearly to people who are understandably have questions, are passionate, are concerned, as we are about the images that we have seen, is one, we feel those images are horrible and horrific. There is an investigation the president certainly supports, overseen by the Department of Homeland Security, which he has conveyed will happen quickly. I can also convey to you that the secretary also conveyed to civil rights leaders earlier this morning that we would no longer be using horses in Del Rio. So that is something, a policy change that has been made in response.
No horses. Horses are canceled. Why do you guys think that they use horses there? Well, because the terrain is sandy, it's uneven, it's hot, and you need to be able to see what you're doing. You can't really do it on foot effectively, right? Because there's a lot of people around. They'll just kind of swarm you. You can't really do it in a car. I mean, you kind of can, but, cars got limited vantage point. Maybe you could imagine a big MRAP and you got some people on top of it, but it's hot up there. It's not a really good thing. The easiest way for individual Border Patrol officers to navigate that terrain in that kind of situation is horses. It's still the best way to do some stuff. It's the optimal tool for the job. I'm sure that there's, we could probably pay Lockheed, a couple $1 billion, and they could probably come up with some kind of like electronic horse or something like that. I don't know. But right now, for Border Patrol, horses are the optimal tool for the job that they needed to do. And now the White House, because, again, you just heard it. Jen Psaki said, well, this is a policy change. Well, why is it a policy change? It's a policy change because a bunch of idiots who are supposedly college educated don't know what reins are. They've never ridden a horse. They're unfamiliar with horses, even in the movies. You would think that at least people have seen horses in the movies and have kind of a general concept of like, how does a horse work from watching it on TV. These people are so dumb, they don't understand what reins are. And because of their stupidity, we now have a White House edict changing very real border policy, taking away one of their tools, one of their key tools to enforce the border integrity, which they're barely doing anyways. And it's concerning because where else there's a lot of stupid people in the country and in the world right now. So it's concerning. Where does this go? And maybe less so about looking towards the future, although that's very concerning. You can kind of use that to evaluate a lot of the past. How many other policy changes have we made because people are idiots and don't understand something? Quite a few. I think I could probably do an entire show just going through that, but it's concerning that we now have just kind of this 1-to-1 ratio of a bunch of idiots in the media and on Twitter don't know what a horse is, and then a week later that becomes rubber stamped as White House policy to fix this problem that didn't exist, which is kind of, I guess, Democrat. It's kind of the Democrat core mission is to fix problems that don't exist. But all right, so the obviously this big camp is kind of an eyesore. So the Biden administration late this week cleared the camp by busing immigrants into the country and bulldozing their campsites so that it would be cleaned and ready to go for CNN to take their own aerial photos, because CNN's drones were not banned like Fox News's were. But where did the illegals go? So whose city are they in now? Well, rough counts, though, Border Patrol and State Department don't really have an interest in keeping these counted. But the rough counts are that 2,000 illegal, mostly single adult males were deported back to Haiti by plane. Oh, that's good. This included 17 separate flights. That sucks for them. They probably could have stayed in Chile and just hung out there. Around 5,000 Haitians are in DHS custody for quote-unquote processing, which means that they are likely to be accepted as asylum seekers. And then 12,000 more migrants are being released with a polite request to appear later at a DHS facility at some point in the future. Their orders are to report for a hearing. History has shown that illegal immigrants do not show up for their hearings. And also, I didn't put this in the notes because I don't really understand the nuance of it, but it's not really important. But there's, first off, it's crazy that we just release illegal immigrants and tell them, oh, hey, can you come back to us later? No, you hold them in detention until you figure out what to do with them. Probably send them back. But there's two types of notices to appear when they get released with a request to come back. One of them is a very strict legal definition where it's a federal offense if you don't return and show up for your hearing. And then there's another one that's just hey, please come back. Here's my business card. But you don't have to. It's not going to be a felony if you don't do it. And the ones that they're giving out are the lighter ones. And the story was that the ones that are federal offenses, the requests to appear that are much more strict, those forms take about an hour to fill out, but the lesser ones take about 20 minutes to fill out. So because there's so many of them, DHS has decided to go with the easier ones, because we have to make sure that we have as many people here as possible, so much so that it's collapsing our immigration system. Here's a good rule of thumb, and not the rule of thumb where like Biden said, where it's you gotta make sure that your whip that you're beating your wife with is the size of your thumb. No, but a good rule of thumb is if you have so many illegal border crossers that you don't have time to do the paperwork, just send them all back. No need to do paperwork if you just send them all back. Maybe you shouldn't have let them in to begin with. They were doing just fine in their tent city underneath of that overpass. The horses seemed to be keeping them at bay. But all of a sudden we just let them in. And then, oh, well, now we, there's too many of them. We don't have time to do the paperwork, so we just got to release them. Sorry. All right. So the some stats on how likely are they to show back up. As you can probably tell, the numbers I listed off, 12,000, 5,000, and 2,000, that doesn't quite add up to 30,000. So the number of people that they are, the number of illegal aliens they're just releasing into the country. Again, this is State Department math, where if it doesn't make sense to you, don't ask. You're not allowed to ask questions. The remaining group, the remaining numbers is, again, probably about another 10,000 that they're just releasing into the country. So somewhere between like 12,000 and 20,000 illegal Haitians entered the country this week, alongside probably another same number of illegal people from all over Central America, because when you've got 200,000 illegal border crossings a month, that's a lot of border crossings per day. So the Haitians probably don't even really make a difference at this point because there's so many flooding over. Let's see here. The Biden administration has already engineered the worst market and jobs, the worst economy and jobs market in history. Remembering our warning that we're currently sitting on the edge of a cliff atop the mountain of Biden's bad policies, and it's a long way down when we fall. No matter who is president, the damage is already done. So we're either going to get to experience that roller coaster under the Biden administration, which I think that we will, because I don't see how we kind of keep this going for too much longer, or it's all going to collapse in the next administration. But it will collapse. This is unsustainable. Let's see here. And what about COVID? Well, just a few weeks ago, Biden was saying that he was losing patience with the unvaccinated and accused them of being the reason for more lockdowns. At the same time, according to Jen Psaki, the Biden administration is not ensuring that illegal aliens are vaccinated. So they're just dumping as many illegal immigrants as they possibly can, and none of them are vaccinated. Let's watch Jen Psaki try to respond to this.
Question about what's going on at the border. Is somebody asking the foreign nationals who are walking into Del Rio, Texas and setting up camps on this side of the border for proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test?
Well, first of all, I can readdress for you or re-talk you through what steps we take.
That is the policy for people who fly into the country. So if somebody walks into the country right across the river, does somebody ask them to see their vaccination card?
Well, let me explain to you again, Peter, how our process works. As individuals come across the border, and they are both assessed for whether they have any symptoms. If they have symptoms, the intention is for them to be quarantined. That is our process. They're not intending to stay here for a lengthy period of time. I don't think it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. These are individuals, as we've noted and as we've been discussed. We are expelling individuals based on Title 42 specifically because of COVID, because we want to prevent a scenario where large numbers of people are gathering, posing a threat to the community and also to the migrants themselves. So those are the policies that we put in place, in large part because, again, the CDC continues to recommend Title 42 be in place, given we're facing a global pandemic.
So her saying that the illegals will only be here for a short time, so it doesn't really matter if they've got COVID. Wow. There's a couple layers to that. It would seem to me, though, that the Biden administration is not really that concerned about COVID, not in the same way that they're concerned about you having COVID. And let's see here. So Article 42 is also not a Trump-era policy. It was enacted in 1893. It's kind of a standing law that we've had for a very long time. The act allows for barring border entry during a pandemic. So far, only 2,000 of the 30,000 illegal Haitians were deported under that provision, and basically 0 of the 200,000 a month of all of the other border crossers. On a related note, apparently Biden plans to transfer some of the migrants, the illegal aliens, to Gitmo. That was something that was feverishly reported earlier in the week. Let's see here. So, hold on a second. All right. So I'm not sure where. Hold on. I'm not sure where this. think this is a news article. Give me just a second here. Yeah, I'm gonna skip over that because I can't attribute what news article that is. I think I forgot to add what the sourcing on that was for. But basically, the Department of Homeland Security has requested that they've basically put out a job listing for contractors that can speak Haitian. I forget what the language is there. And their posting would be at Guantanamo Bay. They have also requested approximately 100 to 400 beds be built or allocated at Guantanamo Bay, along with this Haitian translator. So here's kind of what we think is that 15,000 last week, with 10 to 20 more thousand on the way, and kind of just an endless tide of Haitians and other Latin American countries after that. 400 tents at Guantanamo Bay doesn't really put a dent in that, and it really just doesn't even make sense that they would be going to Guantanamo Bay anyways. So I kind of think that this is just a sensational media story that people are trying to, oh my God, could you imagine how inhumane it would be to send them to Gitmo? And I do imagine it, and I don't really care, because Guantanamo Bay is where we send foreign invaders that mean to do us harm. So yeah, I would say that it would be appropriate to send them there. But again, they're not really doing that. It's just sensational. It's trying to, again, gin up that emotional rancor that the left always loves to have people in. You know, always make a decision emotionally, always have your politics be emotional, never think about it logically, never think about it with principles or values or what's even possible with the current economy. Just be emotional about it and let them do whatever they want. Let's see here. So here's the part that I think people are missing, though, is I don't think that they're just sending a random 400 Haitians to Guantanamo Bay. I think, because Guantanamo Bay is basically for terrorists, like that's the point of it. The 400 extra beds isn't meant to be a solution to the migrant crisis of tens of thousands. It's meant to be a solution to the terrorists that have likely embedded themselves inside the flood. The DoD, I believe that they are asking for Gitmo beds and staff there that have, because they've got intel that there's terrorists embedded inside the horde of migrants. I think that there's an expectation that, there's probably going to be some pretty bad guys in this group, and we're going to need to send them somewhere. And Guantanamo Bay they're bad enough that they might have to go there. So that's what I think is going on. But we're never going to get a confirmation on that because it's probably classified. But if you think about it for a few seconds, why would they want to set up new beds at Guantanamo Bay? Why would they need Haitian translators? Well, there's probably some credible intel somewhere that there are terrorists embedded with the Haitian illegal migrants. So, let's see here. We also have a story. So this was our border story on the Haitians, but we also have a story on our other recent group of arrivals, the Afghans. How are they doing? What's them Afghan boys doing? All right, so Afghans, we got it from military.com. Afghan evacuees at Fort McCoy face charges of domestic violence and sex with minors. They're beating their wives and fucking kids. Who could have thought that would possibly happen? My goodness, no one ever saw that coming. It's almost like that's not exactly what the entire Afghan culture is based around, is pedophilia and beating your wife. It's not like that's just the only thing that they do and the only thing that they've been doing for thousands of years, and that's why their culture never got off the ground. Let's see here. Let's read. So, from military.com, 2 Afghan evacuees. Sure, let's call them evacuees. 2 Afghan evacuees who were living in Fort McCoy in Wisconsin have been arrested in unrelated cases. One was charged with crimes against minors, the other with assaulting his wife, the Justice Department announced on Wednesday. Brullah Nouri, 20, has been indicted on 4 charges that allege he engaged in sexual acts with a minor. With minors. with multiple minors. According to court documents, Norée touched the genitals of one victim in 3 separate instances using force in the barracks and bathroom at Fort McCoy. The indictment also alleges that he tried to engage in an unspecified sexual act with another minor victim. According to court documents, the victims were between the ages of 12 and 16 years old. A gender was not given for either, which I think that's an important point because it actually makes a difference what the gender is. Because if the Afghan migrant was raping a little boy, then we know that he was probably working with the State Department. And that he may have even been a translator. However, if he was raping a little girl, then we know that he's probably a Taliban infiltrator or at least a Taliban sympathizer. So I think it's really important that we get to the bottom of what the gender of the child that this Mohammed guy was raping, because again, you'll know right away. If he was raping a little boy, then he was probably working with the State Department. And if he was raping a little girl, then he was probably with the Taliban, because that's how you can tell the difference. Which you might think that's a joke, or a very dark joke, or being hyperbolic, but it's actually it's got something to it. It's how you tell. It's how you tell. Let's see here. So according to court documents, the victims were between. I already read that part. In the other case, Mohammed Haroon Imad, 32, allegedly assaulted and strangled his wife on September 7th. The woman, who is also an Afghan refugee and is identified only... Wait, she's a refugee, but the beginning of the article said... Wait a second. They said evacuees. Are they evacuees or are they refugees, military.com? You can't just keep switching up pronouns like that. It's important. It's gotta be one or the other. They can't be refugees and evacuees. Like, is it both? Is it, I don't know. I didn't know if those words were like interchangeable like that. I thought refugee had like a very specific meaning. Anyways, let's see here. So the woman, who's also an Afghan evacuee and is identified only by initials. Well, I'm guessing her last name's Ahmad, but I don't know. Only by initials in court papers, reported the alleged assault to soldiers on base, who then moved her to an all-female barracks. The criminal complaint says that the woman told soldiers that her husband, quote, beat me many times in Afghanistan to the point where I lost vision in both eyes. Wow, we only brought back the best and brightest, didn't we? Again, you got to remember way back at the beginning of the Afghan evacuation, when a C-17 was commandeered by 800 Afghans, and the pilots just took off anyways, and then they were given awards and commendations for having their plane seized and then taking 800 unvetted hostiles to America, and they were given awards for that. Yeah, you got to wonder how many people on that plane would go on to rape children and beat their wives, because those pilots are responsible for that. And I just think it's really great that we had all of we gave up all of our bases in Afghanistan, right? We abandoned all of them, and now either the Taliban has them or China's going to get them eventually, whatever. But we had this, I'll call it a tradition. Us and all of our other NATO allies who had bases in Afghanistan had this kind of tradition where they would allow bachabazi, or raping boys, to occur on base. The Afghans that were on base, either the Afghan police or the Afghan soldiers, they were allowed to bring little boys onto U.S. military bases or NATO allied bases and rape them. That's what happened over there. And you know that it happened over there because a few of the soldiers that tried to stop that over the last 20 years are in Leavenworth now. And so I feel like the State Department was just so crushed that they couldn't have little boys being raped on U.S. military bases anymore. And so now we've brought back all these Afghans to U.S. military bases here in the States, Fort McCoy, and we've got the same thing happening. All this pedophiles and boy rape and all this stuff. So it's good to see that we're maintaining that tradition of using taxpayer dollars and military resources to allow Islamic pedophiles to rape children. It's great, guys. Aren't you so happy that all your tax dollars are just, they're doing the Lord's work out there? All right. that is our immigration update, which went on for far too long. Our next story is hopefully a little bit shorter. So let's see here. We have an update from an old story, very old story, one of the oldest, in fact. Hunter Biden laptop is confirmed from the New York Post. Yes, New York Post. They say Color Us shocked, and Direwolf Media agrees. Color Us shocked that the Biden laptop has been confirmed. Now, you guys might remember the Biden laptop from us covering it like literally a year ago. We covered it extensively a year ago and went through all of the proof and evidence and circumstantial mishaps for the last year on that. And it all seemed to line up. And so it was funny that all of a sudden this week, the mainstream media caught up. Oh, yeah, the Biden laptop, it's real. It's real. You'll remember the Biden laptop story as being banned by Twitter and unable to be disseminated before the election. So much so that actually this very paper, the New York Post, was banned from Twitter because of their article, which is crazy. And then there was also a poll a little bit after the election that polled Democrats who weren't aware of the laptop story, because obviously there was a lot of effort to suppress that story, like the most effort. Like you knew that this story was true because of how hard they fought against it. We had never had social media been pretty bad with throttling and banning individuals, but for social media to go to the point, for Twitter to get to the point where they banned one of the oldest newspapers in America because of a story they published, that was pulling out all the stops. And you know that they weren't going to pull out all the stops for a story that wasn't true. That they needed to make sure that was suppressed in every way possible. So we knew it was true right off the bat. But there was a poll after the election that explained to people who weren't previously aware of the laptop story, hey, here's the laptop story. If you had known about that, would you still have voted for Biden? And enough people that it would have swayed the election said, oh, I didn't know that, and wow, I would not have voted for him, or I would have voted for Trump had I known. So that was a story that, definitely needed to get out there. It was definitely true, and the establishment did everything in their possible power to make sure that it didn't get out. But now it's been a year later, and Biden's had some mishaps, and so the media is kind of, you know what, Biden, we're going to stop carrying your water, and we're going to make you have to look at this laptop in the face here. So the story from the New York Post comes from, in his new book, quote, The Bidens, Inside the First Family's 50-Year Rise to Power, Politico reporter Ben Schreckinger says that evidence points to Hunter Biden's laptop being legit. Now, interesting, and maybe New York Post is going to get into this here, which I don't know because I didn't read this article before I brought it up here. Let's see here. So Politico, they didn't report on it, but one of the Politico reporters wrote a book, which means that they have had this evidence that the laptop was legit for at least 6 months, maybe longer, because it takes a while to write a book. And this is a pretty big story, because the story about the laptop being real is that the laptop shows that Biden is extremely corrupt and was selling his office for decades, and that he's probably beholden to China and other adversaries, and that he's been using the office of the president now and the office of the vice president before to sell influence and to make himself fantastically rich. Joe Biden left office in 2016 with like $400,000 in his bank account, which is more than I've got in my bank account, but it's not like a crazy amount for somebody of his age. When he entered office again 4 years later, he had somehow amassed $17 million. How does that happen? Pretty good year. Pretty good year for maybe invested in Bitcoin. I don't know. Let's see here. So New York Post continues. While we appreciate the support, the truth, because Politico New York Post originally broke the story last year, and Politico said, "Oh, they're just lying," and so New York Post being a little bit ironic here. We appreciate the support, but the truth is the Post's reports have always been true, and it's only because the media wants to protect Joe Biden that they keep referring to the laptop as unsubstantiated. Schreckinger notes that, quote, a person who had independent access to Hunter Biden's emails confirms 2 of the emails the Post published, including one about a political deal with China with the line, quote, 10 held for H by the big guy. That H is Hunter and the big guy is Joe Biden. But Hunter Biden's former business partner, Tony Bobulinski, already said those emails were authentic, and we covered at the time that Bobulinski seemed to have, while he was a very shady character, his specific allegation was credible for a lot of reasons that we had gone into at the time. Again, it's funny going back to this story because we covered this so extensively a year ago. Like, we've probably had 50, 60, 70 shows since we talked about this. And so it's just funny to go back to it. And I know at the time, I remember that, oh, wow, all this evidence like is very obvious and it seems to all be true. But the details of it so long ago, I can't remember what all the details are. I just know that like we had gone through it so thoroughly and it was so obvious at the time. And, you know, there was so many crises since then that we've kind of moved on. But what New York Post continues that the media just ignored him. They just ignored Bobulinski, even though he had already confirmed that the emails were authentic and confirmed that he was a third party who was also on a lot of those email chains. Schreckinger adds that emails released by the Swedish government also match emails from the laptop. Hunter had gotten into a kerfuffle when he was staying at a Swedish embassy in the building. That has also been reported. And then here's very upstanding citizen here. Let's see here. For those who doubt that Hunter would just forget a laptop at a repair shop, Schreckinger notes that Biden's son abandoned another computer at the home of psychiatrist Keith Ablow. Feds seized that machine when they raided Ablow over abuse claims. Hunter eventually got it back. Quote, I wasn't keeping tabs on possessions very well for about a 4-year period of time, Hunter said. All of this information is out there, yet the Times still called the laptop unsubstantiated last week until they quietly corrected the story. All those stealth edits. And even as Politico credited its reporter, it added, quote, while the leak contains genuine files, it remains possible that fake material has been slipped in. What part? New York Post. What part of it? The pictures of Hunter Biden smoking crack? So, I was remembering earlier today. I think it was Crowder who was discussing whether or not the laptop was Russian disinformation, because you guys remember that was the big narrative back originally. It was like, oh, all this information about Hunter Biden, all these emails, all these pictures of him, this is all just Russian disinformation. And Crowder pointed out, you know, I could maybe see the Russians photoshopping one picture of Hunter Biden's dick with Skittles on it, but 12? And you know, I think that's I think that's an apt point, Mr. Crowder, that yes, 12 photoshopped pictures of Hunter Biden's junk is a bit much, even for the Russian intelligence apparatus. So Schreckinger called the White House to check whether, as we reported, Joe Biden met Hunter for dinner in April in 2015 that included a Burisma advisor, Vadim Pozhashki. Biden's team pointed him to a Washington Post, quote, fact check, which noted that Biden's team had at first said there was, quote, no record of such meeting, which is not an answer to the question, did you have a meeting? Well, there was no record of it. That's a little suspicious. Let's see here. They said, no record of such meeting until they finally conceded that, yes, Joe did drop in on that dinner. The fact confirmed The writer still concludes haughtily that there's, quote, less to the story than one might imagine. I bet you that there's more. It's the perfect example of how Democrats weaponize, quote, fact checkers, fact check, to deflect criticism and enlist social media to censor articles. Yes, because these laundered fact checks that are inaccurate fact checks, not fact checks, basically. The Twitter and Facebook can use those fact checks to say, oh, well, now we can start censoring articles. That was a big justification for the initial censoring of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Was part of it was Zuckerberg just decided, oh, well, it's getting a lot of traction, so we got to shut that thing down. And then later on, they were able to kind of retroactively justify it by saying, oh, well, the fact checkers said that it was false, so we just follow what the fact checkers say. New York Post continues, yeah, there's nothing to see here. See the Wuhan Labs theory. New York Post is a little bit editorialized, and I appreciate it. Because New York Post doesn't need to report on the story again because they reported on it a year ago. So yeah, this is just an editorial, and it's pretty funny. They did a good job with it, but it's just, what do you do? Like, the rest of the media has finally, quote unquote, broken a story that the New York Post broke a year ago. Other than just being pissed about it, the only other response is just to laugh at it, and they seem to be doing that here, so good for them. Let's see here. So consider the level of skepticism brought to bear here. Biden's team lied to us, but we'll take them at their word that nothing of consequence happened at this dinner. Email after email, picture after picture are proved authentic from the laptop, but hey, maybe some of it's fake. The laptop is, quote, unsubstantiated because the media doesn't want it to be substantiated. We figure that won't change, but thanks, Mr. Schreckinger, for at least bucking the trend. That's actually a really good line there. Because you can really insert any word you want into laptop there, but, the story is unsubstantiated because the media doesn't want it substantiated. I mean, that's kind of the defining quote of, like, the last decade. Certainly of the Trump administration. Let's see here. So, again, this is just kind of a story about the story. There's not a lot of need to go back into the laptop story because we covered that all last year. And we spent a substantial amount of time covering it. I believe we spent almost a full 2-hour show going through all of the evidence on the laptop. We did that multiple times. I would say that, we probably covered it for something like 10 hours throughout the history of the show. And most of that at the time. So there's not a lot of reason to go back into rehashing all of that. It's just, this story is just meant to be kind of funny, haha, that like the media finally caught up to the rest of us. And it's almost funny too, because they think that they're breaking news and they're only breaking news to idiots. All of us are looking at this saying like, that's not breaking news. That's a year-old story. What are you talking about? Something that is a slightly newer story though, and does involve Hunter Biden is the emerging artistry of Hunter Biden from The Atlantic. So, you guys might have heard that Hunter Biden has transitioned his career into being an artist of some repute as well. Some of his pieces selling for $500,000. That's quite a bit. It's quite a bit of money. It's a lot more than I've sold my pictures for. Almost like $500,000 more. So let's read from The Atlantic, which definitely has a bit of a bias here, but I think you guys will be able to see through it. Let's see here. So they start with his upcoming solo is a headache for the White House and a window into the murky, that's the way to put it, murky finances of the international art market. Murky finances of the internet. That just means money laundering, for those of you guys who can't read between the lines. Let's see here. So, at some point in the coming weeks, hundreds of thousands of dollars will be funneled to the son of the sitting American president, and none of us will know anything about who sent the money or where it originally came from or why anyone chose to send it in the first place. Wow. What a great deal for Hunter. Yeah, the Atlantic's kind of doing this as like, oh my goodness, like look at this like kind of posh palace intrigue. No. This isn't posh palace intrigue. What they're describing is actually like a high crime, possibly a misdemeanor. Like this is like high level money laundering criminal activity, and oh well, this is just palace intrigue. Let's see here. So the transactions will nominally center on the artwork created by Hunter Biden. What does that mean? What do you mean it was? Well, most of it will center on the artwork. Wait a second. If it's an art sale, what parts of it are not centered on the artwork created by Hunter Biden? Is this just an open admission that like some parts of the transactions will be centered on, oh, I don't know, influence peddling, buying access to Joe Biden? Is that what this is? What do you mean nominally centered on the artwork? It's an art show. It should be all centered on the artwork, not just most of it. All right, so after spending years working alongside post-Soviet oligarchs, work that complicated his father's anti-corruption efforts in the Ukraine. Wow, that's a dense sentence there. Hunter has tossed on a new hat and is emerging as a, quote, artist. CNN has reported that his debut shows, one in Los Angeles, another one in New York, will be held in late December, though the dates have not been announced, which may be because of the scrutiny the sale has received. Whenever they happen, Hunter will make the transition from unqualified oil and gas advisor to budding best. I don't know what that word is. I think it's French. And we will offer his artwork to the highest bidders his gallery can attract. The sales have raised concerns that buyers will purchase the art to curry favor with the president, creating an ethics minefield for the White House. And here's some examples of Hunter Biden's artwork, which I was told that this was supposed to be an abstract art, which I'm not a trained artistician or an artistist. I don't know what is somebody that studies art called. But from my understanding, abstract means that it's abstract. But you can clearly see in this picture that there's ferns, like not terribly drawn ferns, and ferns are not abstract. They're concrete. they're the real thing. So now maybe they're talking about abstract with the sky, but the sky just looks like, I don't know, maybe he like recovered some old wallpaper and was using like reclaimed wallpaper as his canvas, and then he just like ran out of blue paint. That's what it looks like to me. But I don't know if I can call this abstract. Again, I'm not an artist, so I don't really know. I could be wrong, but it doesn't look abstract to me. Let's see here. The Atlantic continues that Hunter's artwork isn't bad per se, which italicizing bad and adding per se, it kind of makes me think that they think it's bad, but they don't want to say that it's bad. A certain base level skill is evident in the paintings. Sebastian Smee, the Pulitzer Prize winning art critic for the Washington Post. Wow. I like how they say his name and then it's like, well, to make sure that you care about him, you have to know that he's a Pulitzer Prize winning art critic. What did you win a Pulitzer for criticizing art? Like, that used to go to people that were like war journalists or like, I don't know, broke open some kind of big government scandal and like uncovered a bunch of classified materials and stuff. Like, now we're giving out Pulitzer Prizes for criticizing bad art. Okay. Let's see here. Sebastian Smee told CNN that Biden was comparable to a, quote, cafe painter, by which I mean you see a certain kind of art in coffee shops, and some of it is okay, and a lot of it is bad, and sometimes it's surprisingly good, but you wouldn't, unless you were related to the artist, spend more than $1,000 on it. I like how I hope you guys think it's as funny as I do, but You got a Pulitzer Prize winning art critic, and his definition of coffee shop art is that some of it's okay, some of it's bad, and some of it's surprisingly good. My favorite part, like, so the Washington Post or the New York Post article that we just read, like, they were kind of taking the piss because it was like they were in on the joke, right? This is not like the Atlantic is writing this like fully serious. Like they're fully serious. And this art critic for the New York Post or the Washington Post, he's fully serious too. That the definition of cafe art is some of it's okay, some of it's bad, and some of it's surprisingly good. I'm gonna use that the next time I do a lot of sales analytics for my company. I'm gonna do next time I do a sales report for them, I'm gonna write, well, some of the sales are good, some of the sales are bad, or no, some of the sales were okay, some of the sales were bad, and some of the sales were surprisingly good. I'll see if that flies, if I get to keep my job after that. All right, and the last paragraph we're going to read here. So the Atlantic continues. Unfortunately for the White House, the people about to profit from Hunter's foray into the art world are anticipating far higher returns and suddenly presenting the Biden administration with a new Hunter-related headache. Hunter's galleryist, George Burgess, has said he's expecting as much as $500,000 for some of the paintings. So $500,000 for an individual painting. That's a pricing echelon that would put Hunter, a person with no formal artistic training, in, quote, the very top tier of emerging artists, according to Arnett. The whole thing is very, very weird, added Arnett. Ben Davis is not least because of Burgess Art Gallery's previously best-known client was Sylvester Stallone. For his part, Hunter has been clear about what he'd say to those questioning the proprietary of his shows, other than fuck 'em. So basically, Hunter was asked, like, hey, some people think that like your shitty art's not worth $500,000 and that people are really just buying influence with your father. And Hunter said, fuck 'em. Which is not really a response, but it is a response and a type, and it kind of tells you what this is about. So obviously this is a giant money laundering scam. This is really just, I don't know if we've ever seen really anything quite like this. Well, that's a lie, because we have seen something like this. We saw this during the Obama administration when Joe Biden gave his brother gigantic contracts in Afghanistan that were worth more than $500,000, that's for sure. This is kind of related to some previous stories from last month, that the White House had actually done some maneuvers that gave Hunter a exemption. Normally, the families of presidents have, kind of well-monitored finances, right? So there was an exemption made for Hunter so that he could sell these pieces without having the buyers be public record. Which, why is there the ability to have an exception for that? And why, of all things, would there be this is the reason, like the son of the president selling shitty art for millions of dollars more than it's worth is probably the specific reason why there's rules in place that the family of the president needs to have their finances monitored, because of stuff like this. This is clearly corrupt. So why would you take something that's clearly nakedly corrupt and say, oh, well, that's the one that needs to have the exemption on it? Like, why does it need to have the exemption on it? Well, because it's nakedly corrupt and we'll get found out if there's not an exemption on it. Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know that. All right. Well, I think this is all stuff that we already knew. The Bidens are super corrupt, and Hunter is very corrupt using his dad's name to profit. None of that's news. But it was funny, so I brought it up. All righty. Let's see. Let's go for our next story here, which is vaccines. If you guys give me just a moment here, take a very brief pause. I'm back. Okay. So, boosters. You guys might have heard that the vaccine is so effective that we require boosters. And the boosters are so safe that the FDA only authorized them for the oldest and sickest people in society, not for healthy people. So the Biden administration said that their master plan for dealing with COVID was to, quote, follow the science. What we didn't realize at the time was that Biden meant that he was going to follow Fauci, who, as we all know, is the avatar of science. He is the embodiment of all that is science. For those of you that are new or need a refresher on that, this was many months ago. Fauci on the floor of Congress No, it wasn't on the floor of Congress. I apologize. It was in a CNN interview. Fauci testified he reported himself in a CNN interview that he was, quote, the science. Fauci said, I am the science, which was rather remarkable to Dyer and I at the time, because I didn't realize that science had an avatar, a person which embodies all of science, and Fauci had declared himself so. At that point, Dyer had declared himself the avatar of national security, and I had declared myself the avatar of math, now that we were able to just declare ourselves avatars of abstract concepts. So when Biden said that they were going to follow the science, we now know that they meant they were going to follow Fauci, whatever Fauci said, even if it wasn't scientific. Let's hear it. The most recent example of the Biden administration's, quote, following the science has been Biden's demand that everyone not only be vaccinated, but also be booster shotted as well. So you got like the vaccine, you got the first shot, and then you got the second shot, and then you got the booster shot, and then you're going to have another booster shot. Just all the shots. Let's watch.
Earlier today, our medical experts announced a plan for booster shots to every fully vaccinated American, adult American. You know, this will boost your immune response. It will increase your protection from COVID-19. And it's the best way to protect ourselves from new variants that could arise. The plan is for every adult to get a booster shot 8 months after you got your second shot. Pending approval from the Food and Drug Administration, the CDC's Committee of Outside Experts will be ready to start this booster program during the week of September 20, in which time anyone vaccinated on or before January 20 will be eligible to get a booster shot. My administration has been planning for this possibility in this scenario for months. We purchased enough vaccine and vaccine supplies so that when your 8-month mark comes up, you'll be ready to get your vaccination free, that booster shot free, and we have it available. Now, I know there's some world leaders who say America shouldn't get a third shot until other countries got their first shot. I disagree. We can take care of America and help the world at the same time. In June and July, America administered 50 million shots here in the United States, and we donated 100 million shots to other countries. That means that America has donated more vaccine to other countries than every other country in the world combined.
You guys did that. You, the taxpayer, donated more COVID shots than anyone else combined. You did. Give yourself a round of applause. All right, so that's right. The miracle vaccine with totally no serious side effects is so effective that you're going to have to get a booster shot. We know that this is true because it was determined by quote-unquote medical experts. Which experts, though, I wonder? Because as it turns out, those experts are not doctors and scientists working at the CDC and the FDA. 2 senior officials at the Food and Drug Administration are reported to have left over the Biden administration's effort to promote and urge booster shots before their own scientists had signed off on them. CDC officials reported that science takes time and they haven't had the time to complete the studies necessary to determine the safety and effectiveness of booster shots. They accused the Biden administration of rushing to get them to greenlight the vaccine just for a positive headline, which is crazy because that's what they said Trump was doing when he did the Operation Warp Speed to get the vaccine developed in the first place. The Biden administration is putting politics ahead of public safety, which is par for the course. Under pressure from with pressure from Biden, the FDA did authorize a single booster shot on the 22nd of September, but only for select groups of the most risky and death-prone individuals. These include 65 years of age and older, individuals who are between the years of 18 and 64 that are at high risk of severe COVID, so probably immunocompromised or morbidly obese, and individuals 18 through 64 who frequent institutional or occupational exposure to SARS-CoV-2 puts them at high risk. So anybody working in like a lab or the medical field, for instance. So, which is funny because that's going to include nurses and doctors who are already leaving in droves because they don't want the initial shot. And so to fix that, Biden's now saying, well, you don't have to get the first shot, you have to get 3. The FDA's Vaccines and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee on Friday overwhelmingly rejected a plan to distribute extra shots to Americans 16 years of age and older to 18. That was the plan that the Biden administration wanted to put in place. They really wanted to give an extra round of shots to 16-year-olds, but the FDA said no. They implied that the reason for the limitation of booster shots for only those most at risk of dying from COVID is that boosters could likely have its own risk that may outweigh COVID, or benefit of the booster may not be comparably worth it. While we are on the topic of COVID, even more evidence has come out about the origin of the virus. In October of 2019, let's see here. In October of 2019, more than 9,000 international athletes from 100 countries traveled to Wuhan, China. Now, this is kind of a new story, guys. It was obviously out in the public record, which you guys are going to see here pretty soon, but it was kind of news to me kind of in this context here. And I think the media purposefully dropped the ball on this, especially in the early days. And I wish that we had gotten a little more traction on this earlier on. Okay, so in October 2019, 9,000 athletes from 100 countries traveled to Wuhan, China. You might recognize the name Wuhan from, the place where the virus outbreak happened. Many of these athletes later got sick with COVID-19-like symptoms. Only now are members of the U.S. Congress demanding an investigation into what may have been the first COVID superspreader event. That event in October of 2019 was the Military World Games, which is held every 4 years, like the Olympics for military athletes, which is, I'm going to get back to that because that's stupid, but bear with me here. I want to come back to that. The games, the military games in Wuhan were the largest event, in the event's history. Let's see here. The U.S. sent 280 military athletes and staff representing 17 sports, ranging from Western golf, ranging from wrestling to golf. During the 2-week event, however, many of the international athletes noticed that something was amiss in the city of Wuhan. Some later described it as a ghost town. France, Germany, and Italy all publicly stated that their athletes France, Germany, and Italy all publicly stated that their athletes had contracted COVID at this event, but U.S. officials dismissed the possibility or were unaware of it. More likely, they were unwilling to acknowledge it. According to U.S. intelligence reports, the earliest we were aware of COVID-19 starting to spread was in November of 2019, when researchers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology were hospitalized with COVID-like symptoms. This new report about the military games now takes the place as the first known case of the virus. It is also possible that it wasn't an accident. Hold on a second. Damn it. Okay. Ex-Chinese Communist Party insider Wei Zhensheng, who reportedly maintains high-level contacts within the Chinese government, claims that the CCP released COVID-19 intentionally at the military games as a bioweapon. We don't pretend that this whistleblower is unbiased, and he didn't really provide, well, he provided evidence of state documents, but I'm not able to authenticate those in any way. But this is definitely something that people who can authenticate it, like, I don't know, the intelligence apparatus, when they get a chance to stop pretending that they're Proud Boys, maybe they could investigate this. It's definitely something that needs to be investigated. I know the big part of the story is, we had this big event with, kind of an Olympics style event with hundreds of countries and all these military people. And, there was the first super spreader event. And that's kind of the story here, right? Is this kind of explains how it was able to spread around the world so fast. I think the bigger part of the story that I noticed right away is, yes, that's all very interesting, and the possibility that it was a bioweapon that was intentionally released, or just that it was naturally contracted by all these people who happen to be coming in from all over the world. That's all very interesting. The thing that I thought that the story was the core of it was that I did not know that there was a military world games like the Olympics every 4 years. And let me get into that for a second. Hold on a second. That's kind of crazy to me. So we're at war with a couple of countries. Well, sort of. We have a lot of adversaries. Certainly, I think some of these people, some of these 100 countries that came with us, I think that some of them are adversarial. Certainly, China's adversarial, and we're sending. I'm trying to not just be like indignatious about this. I'll try to explain myself, but I just listen to like what I'm saying and like think through it logically, right? Try not to be just pure indignation, because I don't like that, but I am very indignant about this right now. We sent our top military athletes to China to demonstrate for them all of our physical abilities. So what are the sporting events? I don't know what the sporting events are, but you can imagine. Well, we said that there was wrestling in there, so you got wrestling, hand-to-hand combat. You probably have some kind of marksmanship in there if it's like the Olympics. The Olympics has a lot of marksmanship drills. You probably have a lot of endurance testing, obstacle course running. Probably martial arts other than wrestling, again, various hand-to-hand combat skills. And so we've got all of our highly trained in these techniques and the best examples of the military. And we're taking them to China to like parade around to China and show the Chinese, this is their endurance, their peak endurance level for this kind of physical activity. Here's certain obstacles that they seem to have problems with. Hand-to-hand combat. Here's techniques that they use reliably, and they seem to be susceptible to this technique all the time. And so we're showcasing to the enemy. Again, I don't think that like specific hand-to-hand combat things are like super classified. It's not like the nuke codes or something like that. It's not, specific structural flaws in like battleships or planes or anything like that. But why would you give our enemies anything? Why would you give them any example? The enemy's not going to, they can probably guess a lot of the strengths and weaknesses of a lot of our hardware and our equipment and stuff like that. But one of the things that they're not ever really going to get a chance to test, unless we're actually at combat with them, is what are we like at hand-to-hand combat? And I don't think that it's a good thing for us to be showcasing that outside of combat to our adversaries. I think that's kind of ridiculous. I don't think it's a great idea that we've got our military showing our best marksmen against the Chinese. I don't think that it's a great idea to have them know which obstacle courses we train on the most. Again, Is all that stuff that they could probably figure out? It's not like super classified or anything like that. Yeah. Is it like the most important thing in war that, maybe the Chinese don't know that we have this goofy jujitsu move that's incorporated into our hand-to-hand combat training? It's not the biggest deal. But even the smallest thing, why would you give them even the smallest thing? The Olympics, I understand what they're trying to do here. It's like, oh, well, the military world games, it's kind of like a show of unity, right? We got all these countries that, maybe they've got varying political relationships. Maybe they've been adversaries in the past. Maybe they're adversaries now. And we're all going to come together and show our support for one world, one race, the human race. And we're going to we're going to just participate in, friendly competition and just build that world camaraderie. Yeah, we have a thing that does that. It's called the fucking Olympics. Like, why would you do it with the military too? We already have the Olympics. We don't need a second Olympics. We already have the Olympics. The Olympics already accomplishes all of those things. Why would you do that with the military? This is just if the rest of the world wants to be silly with their military, let them. Because guess what? Most of the rest of the world has silly militaries. Their militaries are very small. They're not serious, and they're controlled by a lot of European idiot politicians. That's fine if they want to be silly. That's fine if they want to go to military games. The U.S. military should not be participating in this. That is the part of the story that I think everybody missed and that I was the most shocked about, was the U.S. military should not be parading around and doing things that are not learning. Now, should we be sending military representatives to go watch the other countries? Yeah, we should. Should we be giving away our techniques and tactics? No, those are classified. Or again, is it the biggest deal? No, but you look at this kind of in conjunction with other stuff, and it just seems like at every turn, the big stuff, the smallest stuff, every possible avenue that I don't even know who it is at this point, that are politicians, the Pentagon, the military leadership, the State Department, the deep state, whoever, every possible opportunity, the biggest opportunities and the smallest opportunities, they are trying to expose the military's readiness, weaken it, and make sure that the world has a total understanding of what it is that we can do, what our capabilities are, and eventually how to defeat us. I mean, this event pales in comparison to what the world learned about us the last 2 months with the Afghanistan withdrawal, and just what a absolutely horrific job we did on that, tactically, politically, every possible conceivable way that we screwed up on that. And they saw that. And they saw how the military leadership reacted to dissent within the ranks. They saw how it was propagandized in the media, even though it was a giant military failure. And they learned a lot about us. Way more than what they learned about, probably doing some hand-to-hand combat with some Army Ranger. But still, it's an example of trying to make sure that America is as weak militarily as possible, that we are as exposed as possible at every point, the biggest points, the smallest points, and all the medium points in between. And this just seems to me to be another example of that. Now, is there some guy at the Pentagon, some corporal who's like rubbing his hands together and going, "Oh, I know how to weaken America. I'm gonna send an Army Ranger to go do hand-to-hand combat with the Chinese, and they're gonna learn all of our weaknesses, and then they're gonna invade, and it's gonna be glorious Red Revolution." No, I don't think that's going on there. I'm sure that all of the people that were in the chain of command that made these decisions to send the military to the Wuhan Games, they all had the best of intentions, and that's the problem. That's the problem, is that we are so subverted as a culture. The military leadership has been so subverted as a group that they don't even think they don't even have to have evil intentions. Their default intentions weaken America. They don't take the military seriously. They don't take they just don't take it seriously anymore. What I'd like to see is, and unfortunately at this point it's just not even true, is that America's military is just so strong and capable, and there's just no contest. There's no competition. There's no question about it. We've done a lot the last couple of years here to really defeat that notion. But what I'd like to see is that, and that when other countries say, oh, well, why is the U.S. military not at the military games? And the U.S. military says, it's the official position of the U.S. military, the U.S. Armed Forces, we don't play games. We're not here to fuck around. We're here to kill people. And literally calling it the Military World Games really puts a fine point on it as to what is the goal with the world's militaries. It's a big game. It's a big game to them, guys. So back to the original story, though, is another reason why you don't want to have all of the world's militaries gathered in one place like that is because it's an obvious vector for a bioweapon attack. China's sitting there looking like, wow, and 9,000 people from every branch of 100 countries. Wow. What if, I don't know, we got them all sick and they went home and then they got all of their militaries sick first and then the rest of their population. Wow. It's almost like this is a terrible idea because just because the idea that there could be a bioweapon released at this, that the troops could then take home to all of their various countries and essentially gut the world's militaries before a shot's even fired. If this had been something like a SARS-1 with the infectivity of SARS-2, which is COVID, so the original SARS from like a decade ago, if that had the infectivity that COVID does now, you're looking at like a 30 to 40% mortality rate. If something like that was released at the World Military Games, you would have like 20 to 50% of your troops down for the count, at worst dead, at best just sick and incapacitated for a month at a time. You'd have half your military taken out before you figured out what was going on and started locking down your bases. I mean, this is extraordinarily dangerous, not just the revealing of tactics, but it's extraordinarily dangerous for us to be sending representatives to a place that's such an easy vector for a bioweapon attack. That's, again, I don't think that there's somebody sitting at the Pentagon rubbing their hands together saying like, "Oh, I'm gonna send the military over there, and I hope the Chinese get them infected, and then they're gonna bring it back home, and they're gonna get all their buddies sick, and the whole military is gonna collapse in a month, and then the Reds will come in, and they'll make me an emperor of my little fiefdom, and I'll be a hero for the Chinese." I don't think that somebody's sitting there doing that. I just think that, again, they don't take stuff seriously. They're not thinking it through. When I saw this story. Again, I didn't know before I read the story, I didn't know that we had military world games that were like the Olympics every 4 years. The very first thing I thought was, wow, that sounds like a really bad idea because that would be a really easy way to get a bioweapon into all the major countries' militaries. But you got somebody from the Pentagon who they should be thinking like that. I'm just a civilian jerk off that writes code and analyzes sales data for my company. I'm not a military tactician, and I can immediately see this as a problem. And then you've got people up in military leadership at the Pentagon just, oh yeah, world unity, that sounds fine. Yeah, with the Chinese, yeah, of course we're gonna be world unity with the Chinese. We love the Chinese. Bioweapon, yeah, I don't think that's a big deal. No, it's not a big deal. It's just not taking anything seriously is endemic right now across a lot of facets of the country, but certainly in the military, and that's been nakedly revealed the last 2 months especially, is that the leadership doesn't take anything seriously, and at best they're just incompetent. At worst, they are just so incapable of taking anything seriously that it just looks like incompetence. So alrighty, but I think that kind of lends more credence to so again, this guy, the CCP defector, he said he's got documents. I can't authenticate them, but somebody can. I'm sure somebody in the intel community can. He's got documents that say that China specifically released COVID-19 as an intentional bioweapon at the military games to infect these soldiers from all over the world so that they would take the virus back home to their troops and try to infect the world's militaries. That's what they said. I believe it. All right, so our next story is the debt ceiling. And somehow these slides got out of order, but these were supposed to be back for the Hunter story. And look at Hunter's art here. He's smoking and he's using something in his mouth to paint pictures. He's got no teeth. This like abstract representation of no teeth, I guess. He's using his tools of his trade. Got this paintbrush and his crack pipe over here. Happy little crack pipes. Then let's see here. These were supposed to be for the vaccine. Somehow these slides got out of order. I wonder who did that. Alrighty. Let's see here. So we've got the debt ceiling coming up. So as part of emergency measures, quote unquote, that were implemented at the start of the pandemic, Congress suspended the debt ceiling, which is the limit on the federal government has on borrowing money. That suspension lasted about a year and ended a few months ago, during which we added something like $6 to $8 trillion to the debt. It's crazy when you completely take the brakes off the debt by removing the debt ceiling. We just added like 20 to 50% more debt to the books. Wow, who could have seen that coming? No one could. Now that the ceiling has been reinstated, we are at the limit. We are at the limit of the debt ceiling. We can spend no more. This is something that I covered a few weeks ago when there were stories that already we were at the debt ceiling, and Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, was doing what Bloomberg called, quote unquote, fancy footwork to make sure that the Treasury still had money to spend. But there is only so much book cooking that you can do, and we have hit the limit of book cooking, and we're now at the debt ceiling limit once again. The Democrat solution to this is to, once again, suspend the debt ceiling. They would very much like us to not just increase the debt ceiling. They want us to get rid of it completely. This would give the Democrats a blank check to pass their $3.5 trillion, quote-unquote, infrastructure bill, which has very little infrastructure in it. Reporting on this is kind of difficult, though, because 3.5 trillion is just what the Democrats say it is, but it's just not true. The estimated cost is closer to 6.5 trillion. But either way, without the debt ceiling in place, it just wouldn't matter if it cost 65 trillion, because they would just remove the debt ceiling and be able to pass whatever they wanted. And that's what we did for the last year and a half. That's why we had all these COVID stimulus things and just blowing out the debt and all these different checks to people and increasing the unemployment, all of that stuff. All of that stuff was only paid for because we completely removed the debt ceiling. It wasn't that we increased it. We completely removed it until it got back in place. I believe it was at the end of July, or the end of June or end of July, that it came back in place. Other solutions to the debt ceiling, other than what the Democrats want to do, which is just get rid of it completely. Other solutions involve passing a smaller stopgap spending bill that would kick the can down the road to about November. But Ted Cruz has vowed that he will filibuster any attempt to do this, effectively blocking passage in the 50-50 split Senate. Ted Cruz could be overridden if 10 Republicans decide to join 50 Democrats against him, or by the Senate removing the filibuster rule. It's not clear what the result of this will be. I don't know if Ted's going to be successful in his filibuster. I don't know if 10 Republicans will go over to the other side and cancel the filibuster or like break his filibuster. And it's not clear if the Democrats are willing to get rid of the filibuster rule entirely over this, though I suspect not. But anything could really happen in the Senate right now. It's kind of, I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out. Somebody gave us a lemon. It was Timberwolf. Timberwolf, thank you for the lemon. If you would like to give us a lemon, you can go join us on DLive if you're watching us on YouTube. A lot of people over on DLive chat, though we appreciate you guys watching us on YouTube as well. I believe the links are in the description. Let's hear. So, even if the debt ceiling did get extended, the Democrat spending bill is on thin ice all on its own. So even if they do extend the debt ceiling, it's not clear if the Democrats are going to be able to pass their spending bill. I'm considering... I considered doing a more detailed breakdown on why the infrastructure bill is on thin ice with the Democrats, but it's actually really boring. And here's why it's boring. The high-level details are that the old-school Democrats they want to blow out the debt spending money on useless things. And the progressive Democrats want to really blow out the debt and spend it on even less useful things. That's kind of what the argument is. And it's boring, and I think either plan, we should just not pass it. So it's not really a point of like, there's not a lot of point of going through the Democrats just infighting on it. It's not even like interesting infighting. Like it's kind of funny when like AOC gets like a zinger in on Nancy, and then Nancy, like, you know, even though she's 80, is still able to get like a good counter zinger in there. Like, that's funny, and I might cover that. But just the Democrats arguing on, like, you know, should we spend $6.5 trillion of money that we don't have, or $8.5 trillion of money that we don't have? That's just kind of boring. So that's the key difference right now. But because of that disagreement, the progressive Dems have said they might not actually vote for the cheaper spending bill, which is funny because they want to spend more money. It might end up that we spend no money, which, wouldn't that be funny? I support and encourage them. Let's see here. So if we, even if it doesn't matter what the, about the spending bill though, if we don't increase the debt limit soon, we are going to have another government shutdown. The last time we had a shutdown under Trump, the Democrats and the legacy media, but I'd repeat myself, lied that the shutdown meant that Social Security and Medicare payments would stop, that the military wouldn't get their paychecks, that food stamps would stop, that the IRS wouldn't refund your tax returns, that the FBI wouldn't be able to plan false flag terror attacks, that dogs and cats might start living together. Basically, they said it would be pandemonium. But none of that was true. I kind of wish that some of it was true, but it just wasn't true. Approximately 80% of the U.S. government spending is considered, quote unquote, essential and will continue on with or without the debt ceiling. But Fox, I hear you saying, what about defaulting on the debt? Won't that hurt our credit score and collapse the economy? And yeah, it might. It might. And I don't care. Right now, defaulting on the debt is kind of we could default on the debt now, or we could default on the debt later. Maybe we avoid a default now, but we still have default looming on the horizon in the future. So the argument of like, well, let's just keep kicking it down the road, like, that's not very compelling to me, especially if kicking it down the road means that the Democrats get to do a bunch of their programs. I would much rather, if you ask me, I would much rather the U.S. default on our debt and we take a hit to the economy because of that, rather than the Democrats blowing out the printing, which is going to collapse the economy anyways. And then they're going to spend all that money on like gender studies programs and laundering it into the people that bought Hunter Biden's art, or into the, you know, green energy non-sector, building bridges to nowhere, and, funding the Smithsonian to create more CRT things for whatever, or spending it on, the military paying $100,000 to have Ibram X. Kendi come tell them that they're all white racists. Like, I will, if we're going to collapse the economy anyways, I would much rather default on the debt today than also collapse the economy, but the Democrats get everything they want. Because of what they've done the last 20 years, and not just the Democrats, though. The Republicans are part of this, too. This is kind of the deep state, just the entrenched establishment. Because of what they've done with the spending, how they've coordinated the economy, the way the regulations are working, how the banking sector is all tied up, how all of this speculative investment's been going on with the big banks and the Fed and all that stuff. Because of all of that, it doesn't matter what we do, we are on the road to financial collapse. And so long as we are on the road to financial collapse, I'm taking the Democrats with me. You guys, we're not getting anything we want. You guys sure as hell aren't getting anything you want either. We are all going to ride this ship into the ground together, and no one's going to get what they want. We're not going to play this game where you get what the Democrats get what they want for a few years at the expense of my stability and my tax dollars, and then we all run the ship into the ground 5 years from now anyways. No, I'd much rather have, keep a few extra of my tax dollars so I can have 5 years to prepare for the financial collapse, which, it could be 5 weeks from now, 5 years. It could be 5 minutes from now. It's really at any point right now. But so long as it's still coming, and so long as there's nothing that's changed in the public sentiment, there's no plans being put forth by Congress, there's nobody in government taking it seriously at all. They think that we can just keep spending like this forever without consequence, which is just not true. So long as they keep thinking that, and there's not a substantial change in the mentality there, I'll shut the government down. Nobody gets to spend anything. So long as you guys have created the system where it's all going to fall apart anyways, then you guys don't get to have what you want. I'm going to keep my tax dollars. I'm going to use it to stockpile ammo and freeze-dried rice. And people can make fun of me.
Fags.
Whoa.
How dare you? Juicy nigga.
Why would you do that?
Let's see here. Solathra donated $5 and says, I would love to talk to you about the military games. I think you think it's something it's not. And I lost track of that. I'll pull it back up here in a second. But I thank you very much for the $5. I much appreciate that. Let's see here. How do I get back to that? And I'll have to wait for it to catch up on the stream here. Okay, so I will read that back in a second here. Let's see here. So yeah, so as long as there's no substantial movement on again, doing anything about the way the economy is working, the way the debt's working, then no, I'd rather just default today. I don't want to kick the can down the road. I don't want to give the Democrats what they want. I don't want Biden to have his legacy. If we're going to default anyways, let's default today. Let's not kick the can down the road 5 years. And in the meantime, the Democrats get to spend all your money on creating a new, surveillance super state, creating a new financial investigation super state, which what they're working on right now. With one of the things in the bill is that any transaction over $600, the Democrats want to be able to have that monitored by the IRS. Well, why? Why? For what reason? For what reason does transactions over $600? Why do you get to look at that? You don't. So stuff like that where they're not. It's not just about this is what the media and the Democrats are going to tell you. Oh, well, if we default on the debt, it's going to be bad for you because it's going to collapse the economy. What you need to realize is that if the economy is going to collapse, we're either on that path or we're not on that path. Defaulting in the debt is not going to substantially change the course that we're on. And I'm pretty sure we're on the course where we're going to have a financial collapse. So that argument of, we need to avoid a default, otherwise we're going to have a financial collapse, that just doesn't hold water with me because the financial collapse is a given. So miss me with that. The other thing is that let's say we were able to push off the financial collapse by not defaulting on the debt. Well, at what expense? Well, the expense is the Democrats get to continue spending money on building out the culture by flooding the universities with cash that they don't need and building all of these gender studies and CRT programs and all that stuff. They get to continue shoveling money around to various corrupt interests. They get to keep pushing money out to hundreds of countries and spending billions of dollars and other nations and to build their countries while we still have Flint, Michigan is still it's still Flint, Michigan. They will continue using your tax dollars it gives them more time to use your tax dollars to build out the FBI so they can continue perpetrating false flags against us. They can continue to surveil you unconstitutionally. They'll be able to build out the IRS to start tracking any transaction you've got. And then if you've got a transaction that they don't really like, maybe, what costs more than $600? Well, a lot of guns cost more than $600. So now are you going to get on your... after you get your background check, now you're going to have to fill out an IRS form too. And maybe the IRS doesn't really like that you're buying all those guns. Maybe they do. Maybe you get it put on a list because of that. It would kind of be a backdoor gun registry, wouldn't it? There's a lot of guns you can get for under $600, but wouldn't that be interesting? Maybe now you're on a registry because of the $600 transaction thing. So you've got all of these things the Democrats are building. Obviously, they're going to be using that to fund nonprofits and state organizations that are going to be helping manage and tally the votes and all that sort of stuff. So again, I think that the economy collapsing is a given. What's not a given is that the Democrats get an extra 5 years or 10 years or however long it is to continue building their high-tech tyrannical state. So if the defaulting on the debt is the cost of that, I say let's take it. I'd much rather take my chances with the default than take my chances with the IRS, the ATF, the FBI, the NSA, any of those agencies. Much rather take my chances with a recession. So let's see here. So the Republicans, So the other funny thing is that if there was anybody in Congress taking the debt seriously, taking the economic situation seriously, then I would say, okay, we can raise the debt ceiling. But the funny thing is that you wouldn't need to raise the debt ceiling, because if we were taking it seriously, that means that they would be reducing spending and balancing and hopefully overbalancing the budget so that we're actually able to pay off some of that debt. So that's kind of my catch-22 deal is you can raise the debt ceiling if and only if you don't need the debt ceiling. So the Republicans, who are generally worthless, I think that they need to shut down the government. I think that they should not pass the debt ceiling. They should just let the government shut down. And they should keep it shut down for the next 3 years and 3 months. Keep it shut down. The absolute insanity of crippling economic policy handed down by the executive branch and the executive agencies over the past 2 years, even under Trump, under the COVID regime. You've got the CDC making real estate policy, the OSHA making vaccine mandates, the ATF trying to get triggers to be a registered gun object. We've got the revelation that the FBI has been false flagging right-wing violence right and left, while left-wingers are allowed to burn our cities. We've got the absolute failure of the Pentagon and the State Department on the world stage. We've got Border Patrol releasing 100,000 illegals a month into our country. And I could go on and on and on. Why should we keep that open? Well, Fox, we have to keep the government. No, why? We really don't need to keep the government open. Under Trump, the government was shut down for like almost 40 days. It was it was close to a record, if not a record on its own. And during that time, everything was fine. You couldn't go to some state parks, but like it didn't matter. It was fine. Everything was fine. I don't think, and again, 80% of the government still maintains its functionality during a shutdown. Unfortunately, a lot of those agencies I just listed off are considered quote unquote essential, and they would continue operating, which is ridiculous. Basically, I mean, it's been my position for a while now that whoever gets to the presidency next from the Republican side, one of the first things they need to do, and I mean like at 12:01, like they need to be dissolving with prejudice multiple, if not all, of the agencies. And that's kind of more of my more radical take here, which I haven't had the opportunity to talk a lot about in the show. But basically, the agencies are the federal Leviathan. They are the cause of a lot of our problems. They are the cause of a lot of the infringements on our liberties, a lot of the infringement on the Constitution. And a lot of them just need to be dissolved at this point. And so that's my policy goal, is that we get a president that day one dissolves a bunch of these agencies, or at least institutes mass layoffs within them and massively shrinks their function. So when we're faced with a government shutdown, I say do it. I that basically achieves all of my policy goals. And realistically, it doesn't, because like I said, 80% of the government still stays open because they're considered essential. But at least reducing the capacity of these agencies even slightly, I mean, that lines up with exactly what I want. So I say, shut it down, keep it shut down. And maybe while the government's shut down, maybe the Republicans could pass a few more bills that make the shutdown more painful for the bureaucracies. You know, pass a bill that actually suspends the State Department during a shutdown. Pass a bill that forces the FBI and ATF to sell off their stockpiles of seized weapons to fund their agency. Pass a bill that defunds the ability of the Smithsonian to use taxpayer dollars to create racist propaganda posters. And again, I could go on and on and on. Force the universities to use their endowment to fund themselves instead of using federal funds. Cancel Pell Grants for not STEM-related degrees. The media, don't fall for the propaganda on this. The media is going to say, oh, we can't shut down the government. It's going to, you're going to have poor vets that are missing both their legs. They're not going to get their pension checks. Not true. They will. The food stamps program. I don't care. Cancel it. People are going to starve, or we won't be able to put we won't be able to import 200,000 migrants a month now. And I don't care. Stop it. Shut it down. Let the states deal with it. If what's funny is if let's say like ICE, let's say if ICE is considered essential, so it's not actually going to shut down, which sucks. But if it was, let's say the government shut down and ICE had to shut down Border Patrol operations. Well, first off, I don't think that it would cause a big change to the amount of people flooding over the border. I think it would probably be about the same. But that would then open up the gate for the other states to very quickly activate their National Guard. That's a whole other part of the story that from the previous thing that we talked about with the border, is that there's really no reason why Governor Abbott of Texas shouldn't be deploying the National Guard. He's just a coward. But if you started pulling some of these federal agencies out of the way, well, maybe the states could take over. Maybe they would actually do a decent job of it. The media would say, oh, well, we're gonna default on the debt. I don't care. I really don't care. Again, you sit there and think about it. Would you rather take your chances with a recession now, or do you want to take your chances with a government, an authoritarian Democrat regime that has all of these surveillance capabilities to look at your bank account, all your data, to have all the FBI come and pretend to be your friend and implicate you in a false flag event, like to have the ATF come seize all your guns? Would you rather take your chances with a recession, or would you rather take your chances with the Democrat superstate? I'd rather take my chances with a recession. And as for all the parts of the government that might shut down, shut them down. And I think that we need to start designating certain things. What might be an interesting tactic for the next Republican government or next Republican president is to start unmarking certain things in the federal government as essential. Why don't we unmark the FBI as essential? Why don't we unmark the ATF as essential? Why don't we unmark the FDA as essential? Why don't we unmark the Department of Education as essential? That way, when there's a government shutdown, it actually shuts it down. So that's my radical take on this: is government shutdown, bring it on. Default on our debt, bring it on. Let's do this. All right. We have our last story for the night is the Fed boys. You know them, you love them. They're the Feds. All right. So while left-wing violence comes in many forms, riots, looting, burning, terror attacks, assassinations, etc., 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 far-right violence only has two forms: myth and FBI psyops. The myth side is pretty easy. The left will just make stuff up, like a garage pole rope loop, or a 1 a.m. Subway sandwich run in negative 30-degree weather, or a kid wearing a red hat. All myth. Or attributing the environmental extremist that shot up El Paso, Texas, and the Elizabeth Warren campaign contributor that shot up Dayton on the same weekend, falsely attributing them to right-wing attacks. Those are all mythical forms of right-wing violence. The other form, FBI psyops, are a little harder to pin down. They seem to be so conspiratorial that it's basically, they seem to be conspiratorial, and that's because they literally are conspiracies between the deep state and leftists against regular American people who are resisting the destruction of our country. But these conspiracy theories are quickly transforming into conspiracy facts. Let's take the alleged Governor Whitmer kidnapping case that we covered extensively on this show in the past. 12 out of 18 members of the group plotting to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer were FBI operatives. Huh. January 6th. There seemed to have been an odd assortment of extremely violent people who looked a bit like they didn't belong in the crowd. It's been reported that the FBI had embedded agents in the militia group, the Three Percenters, with some of the gatherings having as many as 2 FBI operatives per civilian, a 2-to-1 ratio of FBI to 3 Percenters in the room. Publicly available records show that the most violent offenders at the January 6th riot were never charged. They had their charges dropped. And video of these people showed them in black clad with their faces covered, in stark contrast to the majority of people that were wearing street clothes that day with their faces visible. All of this pointing to these violent individuals being law enforcement agents that had immunity from prosecution. That's been the working theory by Tucker Carlson, and a lot of other people have been jumping on that the last couple of months, us included, that it seems pretty obvious there was a lot of FBI in the crowd that day on January 6th. I could go into that with more detail, but I've done that on the show before, so apologies for kind of glossing over that. I know that that is a high accusation that requires a high burden of evidence, which I'm not going to provide for you today because we've done that before. Let's see here. So reports this week further support that the FBI was embedded with the January 6th group. When the New York Times reported that the FBI had embedded operatives within the Proud Boys on January 6th, feeding them intel real time while they were on the ground. Now, we know from earlier reporting that from Reuters that former leader of the Proud Boys, Enrique Ontario, was formerly an FBI operative who had participated in several undercover operations. And while he's kind of disappeared from public view as of late, it's unclear if his position as leader of the Proud Boys was as part of a FBI operation as well. Though, if there was FBI operatives with the Proud Boys on January 6th, and Enrique's got, the leader of the Proud Boys has a lot of FBI connections, I don't know. Kind of seems like the Proud Boys might be... maybe it's an FBI club. Who knows? We now have multiple groups that have been identified by the media as far-right extremists. And the FBI seems to have a massive presence both within and associated with these groups, which is strange. Which jumps us up to last weekend, where there was apparently another rally, allegedly, in D.C. called the Justice for J6 rally. It was supposed to be a rally to protest the unreasonable detainment of many of the participants on January 6th. But the lead up to this event was so obviously fake and astroturfed that even Trump made a statement saying, "Don't go to this because it's obviously a trap." What was the evidence of that trap? Well, it seems that there were a lot of Fed boys at the Justice for J6 rally. I'm not really sure what this Becker News thing is. I'm going to pull up here, but it doesn't really matter because I'm not going to be reading what they're reporting on or editorializing. They just had a nice collection of various things from the Justice for J6 rally, so that's why I'm pulling this up here. Let's see here. So let's watch this video here of one of the Fed boys getting arrested by one of Pelosi's boys, the Capitol Police.
Yeah. Push him back. Back up. Creds on you? All right, I'm going to get the creds.
So that guy is getting arrested right now. He's just said, I've got credentials. And the Capitol Police guy goes, okay, I want to get your credentials out of your pocket. We'll keep watching this, but spoiler alert, what he pulls out is some kind of law enforcement shield, probably FBI.
What happened?
Back up, please. Cruiser 100. We have the individual stop.
You guys just give us a little space, all right?
Give them a little bit of space.
Give us one space, all right? Thank you.
Ask the white chair what?
Are you undercover? Are you part of the event?
I'm just here. Nazi fags.
How dare you?
Jews in the...
Why would you do that?
Slow poke for $2. Thank you. Said the people there glowed so bright you can see them from space. Yeah, you can. So we'll jump back to the slides here. So this is a zoomed in picture. Again, you guys can go look at this stuff on Twitter and stuff like that. But this he pulled out. He said I'm undercover. I've got credentials. So the Capitol Police pulled out his credentials, and you can see there it's a folio with some kind of shiny object inside of it. Typically that's going to be a badge. You're only going to have a badge if you're probably FBI. That's probably what he is. That's who would carry their badge in a folio like that. Maybe a detective, but he's probably more likely FBI. Detectives don't really, I don't know. I'm not an officer, so I guess I won't say what detectives normally do or don't do. But he's some kind of law enforcement, right? So we'll go back to keep watching that video and see what happens. But you've got the Capitol Police says, "Hey, are you here undercover?" And this guy's trying to not blow his cover, so he goes, "I'm just here. I'm just here. I'm just here." That's what he just keeps saying. Obviously, he's there undercover. Obviously, he's there trying to be a agitator. One of the reasons why he was selected out by the Capitol Police to be arrested is because he was agitating. Well, why is he he's got a badge. Why is he agitating? I thought they were just there undercover to stop people from doing bad stuff. When, obviously, as we can see, they're there to stir up trouble. That's what they're there for. And that's why the Capitol Police picked him out, because, oh, wow, look, there's a troublemaker. Like, the Capitol Police are sitting there saying, like, well, we know that there's going to be troublemakers here. It's a far-right event. There's always troublemakers here. And the troublemaker that they grab, who is it? Well, it's an FBI guy who's stirring up trouble, trying to trick other people, other right people, into also causing trouble. And what seems to happen here is that you get... once the doors were blown open on January 6th, you had a lot of people kind of meandering in and walking in. But the people who actually broke down the doors, definitely one of them was suspected to be FBI because he got kind of grabbed and citizens arrested. And there's some video of that we've covered in the past here. But it seems difficult to get the right-wingers to do a lot of violence. It seems to be people dressed up in black with their faces covered. He looks more like an Antifa guy than a right-winger. But you look at somebody who's got like an American flag cutoff T-shirt, or they're waving a Gadsden or something, or they've got tactical gear on and they're open carrying. They're not the ones going around like beating people up, curb stomping their faces, burning down small businesses, breaking in the windows on the Capitol. Again, what happened on January 6th? There was a lot of people walking around once they got in. There was a lot of people who were infiltrating various congressional offices. There's some famous pictures of various notable right-wing figures that were in Nancy Pelosi's office on the phone and sitting in her desk, and they sat at the podium and the House chambers and stuff like that. And that's all very wrong and nuisance. I wouldn't call that violent, though. It's a nuisance. They shouldn't be doing it. It's disrespectful. It might be a little bit vandalous, but mostly it's not violent. Busting in the doors was pretty violent, but not a lot of evidence that that was widespread with how many people were there. It was a very small group of people that were actually busting in the doors. And then you had some of the imagery from J6, and while most of the imagery was of press, people carrying around cameras and microphones, and the other half, which we're going to get into in a second here, were clearly Fed boys. The people that were just dressed regular with some kind of America-centric or independent-centric graphic T-shirt, waving a Gadsden flag or an American flag or a Trump flag, they're all just standing there. They don't got their faces covered. They're wearing bright-colored, normal-looking clothes, and they're meandering about. They're not causing a ruckus. Who's causing a ruckus? Well, it's just look at this guy. He's got black over his face. He's got these big old sunglasses so you can't see his eyes. His shirt's black, and then he's the one that the Capitol Police were able to identify as causing trouble. They went up and grabbed him, and then who is it? Oh, it's an FBI guy. Oh. It's if you got somebody causing trouble at a right-wing rally, pretty good chances are that it's an FBI guy. I mean, the Capitol Police picked one guy at random, and it's an FBI informant. Or, no, it's actually an FBI agent if he's got a badge. What's the odds of that? I mean, normally, under normal circumstances, you would think the odds would be pretty low. I mean, let's say you grabbed a random Antifa rioter off the streets of Portland or Kenosha or Minneapolis during the riots. What's the odds that they're an FBI informant? Or that they're an FBI agent and they've got a badge in their pocket? I'm guessing pretty low. I'm guessing 0. Because there was no reports of that at all. But you grab a random agitator. You know, you go to a far right rally and there's somebody causing a problem. If you grab them, it seems to be a pretty high chance they're an FBI agent at this point. Let's keep watching that video though. We'll keep watching because what are they? What are these Capitol Police going to do now that they've caught themselves a fed boy fish? Are they going to toss them back or are they going to reel them in? What are they going to do?
The guys got it. It's on the everything all good?
You already verified? Back up.
Now they also, I'll roll us back a little bit, but they're also, he's got a weapon on him, and so now they're discussing, okay, why are you carrying, you know? And so he's trying to get out of here because he wants to go back to doing what his mission was that day. His mission was probably to go trick Trump supporters into doing stupid stuff, and then he was gonna they were gonna get arrested. But the Capitol Police got to him first, and so now he's got his badge and his weapon. He's trying to get out of the situation and maintain his cover, and it's just not working. It's just not working.
I'm not part of the event.
I'm just here.
Where's your weapon?
Help the guys got it. It's on the
Again, he's in D.C. right now, so as a civilian, you cannot have a weapon in D.C. Now, it's odd because, you know, the Constitution says otherwise, and there's only one law in D.C., and that's the Constitution, but I digress. But if you're carrying a weapon in D.C., you're either breaking local law or not constitutional law, you're breaking local law, or you're a law enforcement agent, which this guy clearly is.
You already verified? Back up.
What's your name?
Working? No.
9:35 November. Good. Chips around there.
What's your name, sir? Just don't drop it on my head. How about that? Perfect.
Where you want to take? All right.
What's your name?
All right. Give me a diamond this way.
Copy.
This way. Go straight.
Copy.
Oh, getting the diamond escort formation.
Move back. Move back.
Oh yeah, move back, civilians. Move back. We gotta protect our Fed boy, because you know why they did that, right? You know why they did that, because these Capitol Police realize, oh, we just outed him as a Fed boy, and if we just leave him here and don't exfiltrate him, the crowd will tear him apart. Now, I actually don't think that's true. I don't think the crowd would actually tear him apart. I think the media might tear him apart. The media might say, hey, let's do an interview. And he's going to have to say no, and he's going to have to figure out a way to get out of there. And the media is just going to hound him all the way to his car and probably follow him to ask him what's going on. Because there's probably a lot of right-wing media there, too. And as they should. If this was a left-wing rally, though, and one of the Antifa guys got found out to be a Fed, if the Capitol Police had just tossed him back, the Antifa guys would actually tear him apart. Like, they would probably severely injure him. On the right, though, lucky for him, we don't do that sort of stuff. So he would have been perfectly safe if they had just tossed him back. Just might have disrupted the narrative a little bit. Let's keep watching as they help him escape his blown cover.
Right to the path.
Back up. Back up.
I also find that interesting too. You got Capitol Police putting hands on, not aggressively. I'm reasonable, but putting hands on and telling the press, back up. Like, wait, why? Why? I mean, it's just you're not allowed to film the the Fed boys now. Is that against? I guess it's against policy. Maybe it's classified. I don't know. But you you know that this guy and the media, you know that they're all on the same page here, because if this had been another situation, if this had been an Antifa rally, and it was so let's imagine this. Let's go down this rabbit trail. Let's say that this was a Antifa riot, and the Capitol Police, which did happen just last summer, 2 summers ago now, because it's the end of this summer, 2 summers ago, you had Antifa rioting all over DC. If let's say the Capitol Police had plucked one of the Antifa members out, and it was discovered that they were a Fed, and then the Capitol Police were trying to get him out to safety because they know if they toss him back, Antifa's going to tear him apart. Let's say during that process of exfiltrating him, a Capitol Police officer, because this would be back under the Trump era, a Capitol Police officer lays a hand on a press filmer, like somebody filming for the press. Could you imagine the explosion that would happen from that? Just the wall-to-wall coverage. Like, Trump's Gestapo lays hands on the media. Trump doesn't want him to see that the FBI is all the Antifa violence is from the FBI and all this stuff. And can you imagine the blowback from that? And, it's no big deal. I don't think this is unreasonable that the officer put hands on this person filming. However, I do think it's a little bit ridiculous that you've got, probably 10 Capitol Police that are trying to exfiltrate this FBI guy, which is kind of ridiculous. And then they're also trying to block the press from viewing him, saying, you got to get back up. You can't be filming, all that stuff. That's not right. That's wrong. But I just imagine, but I'm reasonable, right? Like it's wrong, but it's not that bad. It's bad, but it's not like the worst thing ever. It's not worse than slavery, right? I mean, it's on the spectrum somewhere between not that bad and not worse than slavery. So we've at least kind of bounded it a little bit. But because of the left, if this were to happen in an Antifa rally, the left would just go apoplectic that the Capitol Police put hands on a reporter. I just want to point that out. It always strikes me the difference. And it's just because there's this default narrative that the right-wingers are bad and anything bad that happens to them is good, and that the left is good, and anything that they do that's bad is justified, and anything that happens to them that's bad is completely unjustified in all circumstances.
Spread them out. Spread them out.
Back up. Back up.
Right here, Wendy. Right there. Now,
look how they just barely, like, these guys too, like, look how clad up in armor they are. They really look like Minority Report, or like they're ready to go, like, I don't know, like stomp a building or something. I don't know. I mean, they are really, really armored up. I don't know what they're expecting. But beyond the being armored up, they're also barely able to fit in their armor. These fucking fat pieces of shit just smashing their faces with donuts. Back up! Back up! Back up! I'm gonna get my donuts in here. You gotta back up, got a big wide load coming through here. It's just like absolutely pathetic.
Just circle. Right here. Everybody move back for me, please. Stay back, please. Please stay back.
Do you have a weapon? Do you have a weapon, sir? Sir, do you have a weapon?
Everybody back up for me, please.
Back up. Sir, do you want to make a statement? Do you want to make a statement?
What's your name, sir?
Guys, keep backing up for me, please. Thank you. Just hold the press.
And that's the end of that clip. So we also had, let's see here. So yeah, the zoom up from that. We also had these guys here. So got a couple of things highlighted here that we'll go through. So this was a rather viral image of some of the attendees at the Justice for J6 rally. And this group of people looked a little odd in how uniformed they were in their non-uniforms. And the I don't think it's really a meme, but the reporting on this has just been kind of, especially from right-wing commentary, is that, and I agree, is just using my judgment this looks like a group of glow-in-the-darks. It looks like a group of people that are there undercover. This doesn't look like your regular run-of-the-mill group of people. And there's a few things that kind of highlight them as probably FBI, or at minimum FBI informants. So you got these, all of them have essentially identical glasses. These are all the exact same model of Oakleys. This guy's wearing Ray-Bans on the left here. The three in the middle all wearing the same Oakleys. Or actually the four in the middle here all wearing the same Oakleys. And then I believe the guy in the back also has the exact same pair of Oakleys. So that's all highlighted in green. Then you've got the circled in red. They're all wearing, or a good portion of them are wearing the exact same Garmin smartwatch. probably part of their FBI kit there. In orange, they've all got the exact same set of water bottles. It looks like even the labels were pulled off of them, which kind of suggests that maybe it was FBI water. Like, here, you can't have it branded, but here's a water bottle. They clearly all came from the same spot, right? The thing that I think is the most telling, though, is circled in blue. Either they're happy to see us or they are printing. Printing is the condition when you are concealed carrying, and the imprint of your carry is not so concealed on the outside of your pants. These bulges look a little bigger than cell phone bulges. They might be cell phones. Who knows? The guy in the middle here, though, his outline, and again, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this, and this is the last story for the night. I'm sure you guys have seen the breakdowns on this, and I encourage you to go find these images and look at them for yourself. The guy in the middle, his pocket outline appears to be gun-shaped. That is my opinion. That is the opinion of many other people. If you zoom in on it, let's see if I can actually zoom in on this here. I don't know if I actually can or not. Let's see. I can't. It keeps it a consistent size because it's on the slide. Let me try and blow this up here. I'm doing this in real time just for you guys. I hope you appreciate this. But yeah, it's my opinion that this looks like a gun print. I learned about that in my concealed carry class, and it was always something that you were supposed to avoid because you don't want to highlight that you're concealed carrying. That's why you're concealing it. Yeah, there we go. Okay, yeah, so it looks to me, I mean, maybe you guys think I'm crazy or whatever, but there's something in his pocket that is L-shaped, which typically that would be a gun. As either that or he is extraordinarily well endowed in a weird place. Let's see here. There's also... they just had this weird look to them where... one of the reasons why it was thought that these were a group of feds is because the clothing choice is remarkably similar, and it kind of looks like they were dressed by the FBI and the CIA. When they have undercover operations, they have stylists that will build them an outfit, right? And I've actually seen there's some fun TED Talks with a few of these people, and they say, contrary to belief, you want to make something that's like very plain and easy to blend in with. You don't want anything that's kind of like too ostentatious or whatever. And so it looks like they all kind of had the same undercover stylist, right? They all have these kind of a little bit too short shorts, some jean shorts going on here, and then the khakis without the cargo pockets. They've all got these kind of nondescript t-shirts without logos on them. They all have kind of a very exact same body build to them, so they must be having a similar workout routine. The one that sells it to me is the yellow highlights. Is this? I've not seen this, and my former history is as a frat guy, and I lived up the part and dressed the part too, and so I'm familiar with a little bit of the style trend that's going on. But I've not ever seen this like flipped up, rolled up on your shorts. I don't know what that is, but you got 3 out of 5 of them have this weird rolled up shorts thing going on, and I don't know what that is. I've never seen that before. So again, it seems like they had either very, very similar styles, like extraordinarily similar styles, or the same person was dressing them all, which that seems to be likely. This guy in the middle, he was identified as having very long dress socks as compared to the other guys. And there's kind of a joke, and it might have even been a reality, is that, well, maybe he forgot to bring his socks for the day, and he had to wear his dress socks that are from his suit that he would normally wear at the FBI office. And so now he's going to wear his dress socks. Is that true? I don't know. It's funny, though. It's funny to think about. Also, this guy in the middle seems to have done the worst job at dressing himself up. But he's got this, like, haircut that's very, very close to the skull. And you can tell, now this one's definitely a fact, right? Because everybody's gotten haircuts before. You know how haircuts work. Especially when you go in shallow on a haircut for the first few days, your skull's really, really white because it hasn't tanned up, right? So you can see that this guy just got this fresh cut. This hairstyle has been identified by the left. The other side probably has full hair on it, but the left has identified this hairstyle as, again, you guys can, I guess you can fact check on me. We're kind of getting off in the weeds here, but it's kind of a fun thing to end off with, and it's also highly likely to be true. The left has identified this haircut as kind of a fascist haircut. I don't know why. It's just, any given thing on any given day could possibly become fascist. But this haircut has been identified as a fascist haircut. I don't know why. It just has been. But you can tell that he just got it because his skull is so white. He just got that cut that day, and he doesn't normally wear that cut. Otherwise, his skull would have had the tanning on it that would be consistent with the rest of his skin color. So I think that maybe they did that to say, oh, okay, well, let's make sure that he looks like a white supremacist, and we'll give him that haircut, and we'll do it today. We probably could have done it last week so that he tanned up correctly, but they weren't thinking about it. And then the final thing is this guy looking back here. First off, they all have this kind of like stance where their arms are up. So that's something that, and if we had our military wolves on here, I'm sure that they could explain this to us a little bit better. But look at the way that their arms are. All of their bodies, they have their arms are up. And that's why they've got the water bottles in their hands, right? The only one who doesn't is this guy in the blue shirt looking back, and he's glaring. He does not like having his picture taken. He's very glaring. But even him, he's got this posture where he's kind of ready to go. And you look at all of them, and they've got this ready-to-go posture. They got their hands up. They're kind of ready for action. And that's something that happens with law enforcement and military and guys that are trained in combat or have seen combat, is that they have kind of this stance where they're ready to go. They're ready to go at any given moment. And so these guys kind of look like they've got that look to them. Now, their clothing would suggest that they're college-educated frat boys who never enlisted in the military. But their stance suggests otherwise. So I don't know what's going on here, but these guys, as the saying goes, glow in the darks. There's something about them. There's something about them. We know for absolute certain with that video that we watched that guy that was being arrested was an FBI agent, and that he was there in some capacity. Who knows? He was clearly agitating enough that the Capitol Police arrested him or tried to. There's reports that he was one of 4 others that were arrested that day, and it's been reported, I don't know if it's been confirmed, it's been reported that the 3 others were also possibly agents, or were able to get out with their credentials and they weren't actually arrested or charged, which is pretty wild. So I don't know what's going on here, but it seems more and more and more that you've got a lot of funny business with the federal government taking a strong interest in encouraging right-wing events, be they violent, be they terroristic, be they just meandering about. What could have been happening here is that maybe the goal wasn't to create some kind of violent event, but maybe the goal was just to have some FBI guys go there undercover, start talking to people, and get themselves embedded into some of these groups. I'm sure a lot of them blew their covers after January 6th, and they need to get these groups re-infiltrated, because if the FBI doesn't re-infiltrate these militia groups or just these right-wing groups, if the FBI doesn't re-infiltrate them, well, then they'll never commit violence. They'll never riot again. they'll never try to kidnap a governor again. If the FBI is not there to help them do that, they just won't do it. So it's very important for the FBI to make sure that they have a continuous presence in a lot of these groups. And like I said, I think a lot of them blew their covers and blew their network for January 6th, and they're probably working very hard to figure out how to rebuild that. Justice for J6 rally, it looks like it was maybe one of those events. So who knows? That's all just my opinion. But it looks like it's true. It sure looks like it's true. A lot of this stuff, because it's again, it's an actual conspiracy. If it's an actual conspiracy of the federal government, is this particular photo a part of that conspiracy? That one I don't know. But there is actually provably a conspiracy right now of the federal government to conspire together to get right-wingers engaged in violent acts and to do violent things so that they can create this narrative that the right wing is violent. But all that stuff's so difficult to prove because it's like, inherently the intelligence agencies, it's like inherently classified and secretive. And so it's very difficult to get hard evidence on that stuff. But at this point, you got to kind of just use your eyes. And so that's kind of what this exercise was use your eyes. And while Dyer and I on the show for a long time have always advocated don't put yourself into unnecessary danger. You have a lot of rights under the Constitution. Sometimes it's not always smart to exercise them at every given opportunity. And we've been pretty consistent that, if you want to go to like some state rallies or something in your city, that's probably good. But going to like a national level rally for a national level cause, might not be the best idea. You might want to think good and hard about that if that's what you want to do. Not to say that's not your right to do it. Just you need to be thinking about if that's something that you want to do. If you are engaging in that, or if you're engaging in even any local groups, or you're thinking about joining your local militia, or just a gun club or a political organization, you got to use your eyes. You got to use your eyes. You really do. You gotta watch out for those guys that are asking a little bit too many questions. The guys that look like, there's just something about them. There's just something about them. And there's just something about these guys in this picture right here. It's a little bit off. And we've seen over and over and over again a lot of these people. The Whitmer case in particular. You've got this former military vet kind of taking these dork losers under his wing and encouraging them to create this conspiracy, to this plan to kidnap the governor. And they didn't really want to do it, but he kept encouraging them, and he had taken them under his wing, and it was guiding them and mentoring them. And then they did the barest minimum of that, and then they find out that he's a Fed. So you got to watch out for those people, right? You got to watch out for those people. That's not to say that every military vet that's in any political group is probably an FBI agent. It's just that they might be. You got to be careful what you're doing. And if you've got people encouraging you to do violence or talking about it or trying to plan it, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. Don't do stuff that you didn't come up with on your own. If somebody says, hey, let's go do this, and it's something that's bad or something that could be dangerous or something that could get somebody hurt or is illegal, and it's not an idea that you came up with yourself, you need to think good and hard about it if that's something you want to do. Now, obviously, I'm always going to advocate don't do anything illegal. But as more and more things become illegal, it might be maybe a little bit of flexibility on that. But don't do anything illegal, and don't let anybody convince you to do anything illegal or convince you to do something that you don't want to do. That's definitely going to be one of the bigger threats for the right the next couple of years here, is that there's a lot of the federal government has a lot of interest in right-wing organizations and infiltrating them and convincing them to do stuff. That seems to be very clear from all the evidence that we do know. And it appears to be clear from all of the evidence that just is circumstantial, like this picture here. So that has been our show tonight. Thank you so much for joining me, Fox Trevize. Hope you guys are all doing well. Hope you're all staying safe. Hope you're all prepared for what's coming, whatever that might be. And hope you guys, we'll see you guys next Saturday. Like I said, sometime in the next few weeks here, we're going to try and restart games. But you just stay subscribed to us on DLive and YouTube, and you'll be sure to not miss a beat. But the next guarantee is that I will be back here on Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern for a 2-hour show, which takes 3 hours. And stay safe, guys. It's been Direwolf Media, or it's been the Direwolf Show, weekly news recap. The Trevize signing off. See you guys.